On the night of the party, I helped my drunk best friend to my own room, but my childhood sweetheart mistook me for her. It was a night of confusion. Everyone said I deliberately came between him and my friend. Even after we married, no matter what I did, I could never win his heart. It wasn't until I overheard his phone call on the street that I learned the truth. To avenge Jian Yin, I'm willing to spend my whole life holding Jian Mingyue back. Who else would ever marry her? She wants a child. Doesn't she? Well, I'll make sure she never gets her wish. A sharp car horn blaring behind him cut their conversation short. My childhood friend instinctively turned around, spotting me at the corner, his face instantly filled with panic as he rushed toward me. The next moment, I was hit and thrown into the air by a car. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the dinner party. This time, I decided to step aside for him and my best friend. 1. My best friend is the only one who knows about my feelings for my childhood friend. When I saw him drunk and disoriented, pinning me against the wall once again, my eyes darkened. I immediately led him straight to my best friend's room. The moment Lin Yan's door opened, I shoved Fu Shiriwei right into her arms. He needs you right now. Lin Yan was stunned for a moment, then took Fu Shiriwei from my hands and shot me a mocking, scornful smile. Jian Mingyue, have you finally come to your senses? It makes sense. After all, Brother Shiryue's true feelings are for me. Why would you humiliate yourself like this? You were already rejected so thoroughly, yet you still come crawling back like a desperate simp. Have you no self-respect? Hearing this, my fingers instinctively clenched. Even after 2 lifetimes, even though I had already decided to let go, in their true love story, it could still shatter my heart so effortlessly. In my past life, Lin Yan held my hand and said we were best friends. That's why she invited me and my childhood sweetheart to the seaside resort together, and I was the one who softened and agreed. There they were, flirting and carrying on, while I was stuck lugging their bags around like some dutiful servant. That night, Fu Shiriwei drank too much and his judgment was clouded. Right after I got him back to his room, that incident happened. Out of a sense of duty and family pressure, we got engaged, but then Lin Yan took her own life in what was supposed to be our marital home. But in this life, I want nothing more to do with either of them. I gave a wry smile and replied, he's always liked you. I won't get in the way anymore. With that, I turned and walked out of the hotel. The memories this place held were just too painful. Thinking of the suffering from my past life, a flood of tears began to stream down my face, unstoppable. Only after I had cried out the grievances of 2 lifetimes did I finally make a call. Auntie, I said, I've decided, I'll immigrate to Canada. And about the arranged marriage you mentioned before, I've agreed to it. Her aunt's voice was filled with pleasant surprise on the other end of the line. Wonderful, Mingyue, you've finally come around. I'll make arrangements to bring you over right away. By the way, does Shiriwei know about this? She let out a helpless sigh. Mingyue, I don't mean to lecture you, but Fu Shiriwei is your childhood friend, not your guardian. You're an adult now. You need to make your own decisions. We can't keep imposing on him. You're only making things harder for Shiriwei. Out of respect for our family, Fu Shiriwei won't lay a hand on you. But, Auntie is worried about you being alone back home. Besides, he already has someone he cares for. My lips twisted into a numb, bitter smile. Yes, so I'll never have feelings for him again. I returned very late the next day. Last night, I just couldn't stand staying in the hotel anymore, so I checked into a small inn nearby. Little did I know, I'd catch a chill and end up with a fever so bad it left my head all foggy. The moment I got back to the hotel, I heard the news about Fu Shiriwei and Lin Yan's engagement. Fu Shiriwei's silk robe was crumpled beyond recognition, his skin covered in suggestive red marks. Lin Yan was draped in a loose bathrobe that did little to conceal her stunning figure. The two of them were glued together on the sofa, kissing as if no one else was in the room. Fu Shiriwei would occasionally feed Lin Yan bites of breakfast from the table. Seeing I had returned, Lin Yan raised an eyebrow and slipped back into her old best friend persona with me. Mingyue, Shiriwei cooked breakfast himself. It's really quite good, but then, I suppose you must be sick of it by now, right? My steps faltered, a sharp pang shot through my heart, but I forced myself to stay calm, clenching my fingers tightly. Even though the Fu family took me in, Fu Shiriwei has never once cooked for me. The only time was when I was a child, delirious with a high fever, crying and saying I wanted the porridge my mom used to make. Fu Shiriwei struggled for a long time before clumsily cooking a bowl of porridge for me, even though he was only a few years older himself. Even though he mistook salt for sugar and the rice was undercooked, I cherished that memory for the rest of my life. But ever since he met Lin Yan, Fu Shirihue signed up for cooking classes, spoiling her with all sorts of breakfasts, dinners, and desserts. Fu Shirihue's expression was unreadable as he dabbed Lin Yan's lips with a handkerchief. Lin Yan has taken a liking to the villa in the southern district, he instructed, his tone matter of fact. We intend to use it as our marital home and will be renovating it shortly. As for you, I lowered my head, a heavy weight settling in my chest. I knew exactly what he was implying, that villa was to be his and Lin Yan's future home, no place for an outsider like me. He was telling me, in no uncertain terms, to move out. After more than a decade of calling it home, I had ultimately been reduced to a stranger within its walls. I let out a soft forcing back the sting in my throat as I replied. I'll move out as soon as I can, brother. At that address, Fu Shirihue's movements froze. His trembling pupils were filled with utter disbelief. Ever since I mustered the courage to confess my feelings to him at 18, I had refused to call him brother. He had once furiously scolded me, forbidding me from harboring such disgusting thoughts about him, but I was stubborn, clenching my jaw and never changing how I addressed him. Fu Shirihue's voice trembled as he asked. What did you just call me? I remained silent, but Lin Yan promptly cut in. Shirihue and I are together, and you grew up in his house. She kneaded Fu Shirihue's waist, casting a light, airy smile in my direction. So, after we're married, what should she call me? Fu Shirihue didn't answer. He just looked at me with an expression that was incredibly complex and conflicted. After a moment of silence, I pressed my lips together and added, sister-in-law. At that, even Lin Yan's smug expression froze solid. I went back to my room by myself, miserable from the high fever. I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep. Just then, Fu Shirihue caught up. His face was cold as he blocked the doorway, looking down at me to declare, I don't care what you're thinking right now. The fact is, Lin Yan and I are getting married. Don't even think about trying any tricks, otherwise, you know I won't let you off the hook. But how exactly would he not let me off the hook? Was it like that time Lin Yan deliberately spilled hot soup all over me, and he forced me to kneel in the rain to apologize to her? Was it Lin Yan who deliberately pushed me down the stairs, leaving me battered and bruised, only to lock me up until I confessed to slandering her? My past love for Fu Shirihue was a poison I drank to quench my thirst, but I've learned my lesson now, and I'm going to try loving myself. I replied indifferently, understood. Fu Shirihue fell silent again, seemingly taken aback by my calmness, which made him uneasy. I finally managed to carve out some time for a vacation. Tomorrow, you could join us. I cut him off promptly. You two go ahead. Meeting his stunned gaze, I forced a faint, wan smile. It's rare for you two to have some time alone together. I shouldn't intrude. Something came up at home, so I headed back first. I didn't linger. Quickly packed my things, and returned to the Fu residence. Fu Shirihue and Lin Yan, on the other hand, simply turned this hot spring trip into a pre-wedding honeymoon getaway. Lin Yan kept sending me messages. Sometimes it was a photo of fruit Fu Shirihue had personally cut for her. Brother Shirihue is so considerate. Marrying a man like him is a blessing I must have earned over 8 lifetimes, don't you think? Sometimes it was the image of Fu Shirihue, holding a basin of hot water, kneeling down to wash her feet. The man of your dreams is washing my feet right now. Did he ever do this for you when you were a child? Lin Yan always knew exactly how to twist the knife in my heart, but she didn't know that Fu Shirihue used to be this good to me, too. His work kept him incredibly busy, constantly flying between cities at home and abroad. Once, I just had a bad dream, and my voice sounded a bit tense and low when I called him. He immediately ended his meeting and flew for hours to come back and be with me. When I was in school, I was targeted and bullied by some local troublemakers. One of them just slapped me across the face and threatened me for money. When Fu Shirihue found out, he was in a critical state himself, having nearly died from a heart attack and urgently awaiting life-saving surgery. Yet, pale-faced and clutching his chest, he still came to the school to stand up for me. Everything came to a screeching halt when I confessed my feelings to him at 18. Fu Shirihue's social media feed is just as lively, featuring the daily requisite 9-square grid of photos, almost all of which are sweet snapshots of him and Lin Yan. He used to scowl and snap at me, telling me to stop playing those childish games of affection with him. But now, leaning on Lin Yan's shoulder with an ice cream in hand and beaming with joy, he looks just like a boy head over heels in love. I stared silently at his face in the photograph, then lowered my head. Tears fell onto my phone screen, blurring the image into indistinct patches. Just then, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a call from Fushiriwa. I hurriedly gathered my thoughts and answered. Fushiriwa's cold, distant voice came through. "What are you doing?" I glanced at the luggage in the room. Even though I've lived with the Fu family for over a decade, and the gifts from Fushiriwa could fill a dozen rooms, there isn't much that truly belongs to me, or that I can actually take with me. On the shelf sit over a dozen photo albums. Fushiriwa used to sigh in front of me, lamenting that he was growing up, that his face would age, and no one would remember how handsome he was in his youth. So, I started taking a photo of him every day, with my camera, and with my heart, I began to trace the passage of his time. Fushiriwa used to be quite happy about it and was very cooperative, but ever since he realized my feelings for him, in his eyes, it became unreasonable and disgusting. Once, he came home drunk, snatched the photo albums from the bookshelf without a word, and burned several of them in a fit. Now, since he doesn't want to see these things, there's no point in me keeping them. In the box under the bed are the 1,000 letters I wrote to him. It was Fushiriwa who told me that if I ever wanted to find him but couldn't, I should write down all the words buried in my heart and send them to him, knowing he wouldn't want to read them. Fushiriwa never knew these letters existed. And he never needs to. I only took a change of clothes and a photograph with my parents, stepping out of the Fu family villa. I took one last look at the house I'd weathered over a decade of storms with Fushiriwa before finally asking him, "What do you want?" Fushiriwa's impatient voice snapped back on the other end of the line. "Jian Mingyue, can you just leave Lin Yan alone from now on? How many times do I have to say it? It's Lin Yan I love. When will you finally get that through your head?" I fell silent, offering no reply. After all, ever since Lin Yan appeared, I had long grown accustomed to such baseless and illogical blame and accusations, and Fushiriwa would eventually give me his reason. "When you told me you were going back, I thought you'd finally come to your senses. Turns out you were just playing the retreat to advance card. You act like you don't care, yet you keep pestering Lin Yan for information about us. Don't you find that annoying?" I finally found my voice and shot back. "What did you just say?" Fushiriwa cut off my protest with righteous indignation. "Isn't that exactly what you did? Lin Yan just went to shower. I saw her chat history. She sent you a bunch of photos. You were the one hounding her for them, weren't you?" If Fushiriwa truly understood, he would have seen right through it. Lin Yan took those photos for no other reason than to flaunt and provoke me. But that's just how favoritism works. It was just like that time when Lin Yan, without any warning, slapped me right in front of him, and Fushiriwa immediately turned on me, demanding to know what I had done. I offered no explanation, simply listening quietly to his outburst. "Jian Mingyue, when are you finally going to wake up? Do you enjoy self-torture? Or are you just addicted to being a pathetic simp? What do I have to do to finally kill this delusion of yours? Do you have any idea how sick it makes me to be hounded by someone like you?" His every word pierced my heart. I felt a damp sensation slide down my cheek. Startled, I reached up to touch it, only to realize my face was already wet with tears, but I still took a deep breath and murmured in reply, "It won't happen again." Only then did Fushiriwa seem somewhat appeased, and he made his decision. "Lin Yan and I are getting married soon. I don't want any external factors disturbing or damaging our relationship. I originally planned to send you for an internship at a branch office, but now, it seems I have no choice but to send you away to another city." I clutched my phone tightly, my jaw clenched. Every word he spoke was like a knife, stabbing my heart and leaving it bloody and full of holes. The man who once declared me guilty when his family called me an outsider now treats me as an external factor. I finally sniffled and cut off whatever he was about to say next. "No, it's fine, about the job." I paused for a moment, deciding to be a little coy. "I've already got it sorted. The new office is a bit far. Anyway, since you two are getting married, I won't be living at home anymore." After I said all this, Fushiriwa fell silent. After a long silence, he asked me with a mix of urgency and irritation, "When did you find a job? Why didn't you tell me? I could have arranged something for you. Why did you go to another company?" Fushiriwa was always like this, pushing me away while simultaneously refusing to let me go. It was like the slow, torturous execution he subjected me to in my past life, cutting me with blades of hope to keep me alive, only to lead me step by step toward my demise. That feeling is something I never want to experience again. I cut him off again. "I'm not a child anymore. I can take care of myself, brother." I put a heavy, deliberate emphasis on the word brother. a clear reminder to Fu Shiriwe that he was the one overstepping. Fu Shiriwe fell silent. As expected, after a long pause, he let out a cold, disdainful snort. "You'd better mean it," he added immediately. "Lin Yan and I are throwing a celebration party tonight. You should come." He sent me an address and, just as I was about to refuse, snorted, "It was Lin Yan's idea. She said you're her only friend, and she wants you to see her happiness with your own eyes. Our marriage won't feel complete without you there. So, you have to come." Fu Shiriwe and Lin Yan's celebration party was held on a luxury cruise ship in Hong Kong. In my past life, when my affair with Fu Shiriwe was exposed, he was forced to announce our marriage. Yet he refused to utter a single word about it to the public. He never wanted to get the marriage license in the first place, and he wouldn't even take a single wedding photo with me. Even our wedding ceremony only happened because my family paid a heavy price to make him agree. But now, for Lin Yan, he's booked the entire Hong Kong island sky, fireworks worth millions for just 15 minutes, and set them off for a full 3 hours, on a luxury cruise ship that could hold 1,000 guests. He had invited every single friend and relative he could possibly get in touch with. My presence here is completely inconsequential. It wouldn't make a difference if I were here or not. Lin Yan only went out of her way to summon me here to provoke and humiliate me. "Mingyue, sure you is going to propose to me later." With a smile, Lin Yan pressed the camera into my hand. "For such an important moment, I want you to be the one to capture it for us," as she handed me the camera. The prayer beads she had been concealing on her wrist were revealed. The dark red characters carved into them instantly sent a sharp pang through my heart. This was the very string of prayer beads I had begged for on my knees, kowtowing with every step. For Fu Shiriwe during the most perilous year of his heart condition, I carved the characters 4-piece onto each and every one of the 108 prayer beads, stroke by stroke. To this day, the grooves of the carvings are still stained with my blood. Lin Yan's smile grew even more smug. "Shiriwe gave them to me. The other day, when I was at the hot springs with him, I got a bit dizzy and bumped my head on the steps. He said he was giving them to me for protection and good fortune." Then, with a feigned sigh of helplessness, she added, "Honestly, Shiriwe can be such a worrywart. It's just a little bruise on my knee, nothing like what you've been through, Mingyue." Back then, to beg for this string of peace beads, I cowed out until my knees were raw and I couldn't even stand. I still have the after effects to this day. That year, to help Fu Shiriwe obtain this string of peace beads, I developed a chronic problem in my leg. Even now, whenever it touches cold water, the pain is bone deep. But Fu Shiriwe has probably forgotten. After taking their picture, Lin Yan ran over with a smile to take the camera from my hands, but she bumped into me when no one was looking. In that instant, she accidentally dropped that string of prayer beads into the sea. With a pitiful look, she said to me, "Mingyue, I know this prayer bracelet was a gift you gave to brother Shiriwe, and you don't want to pass it on to me, but you worked so hard to obtain these beads. They're so precious. Could you really prefer to throw them away rather than give them to me?" After saying this, she turned to Fu Shiriwe and ventured to say, "You said this prayer beads represent peace and safety. But now they've fallen into the sea. Does that mean?" Fu Shiriwe cut her off before she could finish. "Don't talk nonsense." Then, with a tilt of his chin, he looked at me. "If you lose someone else's belongings, you're responsible for it. Haven't I taught you that?" Oh, he had taught me. All right. It was a lesson I'd never forget. 3 months ago, Lin Yan and I both entered a competition. She deliberately ruined her own work and then pinned the blame on me. Fu Shiriwe immediately seized the project I had painstakingly designed over 6 months of late nights and gave it to Lin Yan as compensation, enabling her to win the championship at the design contest. 1 month ago, Lin Yan intentionally threw the jade pendant she was wearing into the trash. It was clearly a cheap trinket she bought for $10 from a street vendor, yet she put on a pitiful act, claiming it was a gift from her grandmother on her deathbed. Fu Shiriwe knew perfectly well. This jade pendant was a memento commissioned for our family of 3 before my parents died in the car crash. The other 2 were placed in their urns. This last remaining piece is my only tangible connection to them, the sole keepsake that tethers me to their memory in this world. Yet he snatched it without a moment's hesitation and placed it in Lin Yan's hand. Under the weight of everyone's scornful gazes, I finally cracked a self-mocking smile. With nothing left to lose, I lifted my head and said, "If that's what you want, how about I just jump in and fetch it myself?" Amidst the gasps of the crowd, I plunged into the sea with a splash. The icy water chilled me to the bone. but the ache in my heart was far worse. On the dark, churning surface, a bitter wind drove the rolling waves toward me. I rose and sank, numb and mechanical. Until finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sea fell still. I had just heard Fu Shiriwe shout, "Hurry up and save her, what are you all standing around for?" When they pulled me out of the water, I was still clutching that string of prayer beads in my hand, but Fu Shiriwe's face darkened, and he snorted coldly, "I knew you hadn't given up. Today is the day Lin Yan and I are celebrating our marriage. Is this really how you choose to make yourself seen?" I said numbly, "I'm sorry." Just then, Lin Yan walked over and, with a beaming smile, took the string of prayer beads from my hand once more. "Mingyue, thank you for going to such lengths to get these prayer beads back for me. Oh, by the way, sure you mentioned you're moving out. Would you mind if I used your old room to display the figurines he gave me? I used to live in the room next to Fu Shiryu's, the one with the best light, but ever since Lin Yan moved in, I've been shuffled from room to room." First, she claimed to be a light sleeper and said my movements at night disturbed her, so she had me moved to a room downstairs on the same floor, but that wasn't enough. She then said she was having nightmares, and some experts suggested the direction of my room was clashing with her energy, so she had me banished to the attic. I lived in the attic for nearly half a year before she kicked me out, saying she couldn't stand having someone living over her head, and banished me to the farthest storage room. But now, even the storage room is no longer a place for me. I sniffled. "That's fine, it was just a storage room anyway." Lin Yan added, "I've been learning some crafts lately. Could I take a look at that pair of clay figurines you've hidden under your pillow?" At those words, I looked up and met Fu Shiryue's gaze. That pair of clay figurines was a gift he made for me by hand years ago, during a trip we took together. Back then, he said they represented him and me, a symbol that he would always be by my side, so I cherished those figurines as if they were my life itself. No matter what Fu Shiriwe did to me in the past, even when I was left battered and sobbing into my pillow, just seeing them gave me a glimmer of hope to carry on. Fu Shiriwe also knew exactly what that pair of dolls meant to me, so he looked up as well, meeting my gaze with a complicated expression. I just glanced at him and offered a pale, indifferent smile. "Sure, they're in my brother's room, go get them yourself." Lin Yan seized the moment to ask, "And what about your—" I cut her off coolly, "Don't ask me, take whatever you want, just take it, I'm leaving it all to you, including the person who once meant the most to me." At that response, Fu Shiryue's expression darkened. I took a deep breath, feigning composure. "Alright, I've delivered my well wishes, it's time for me to go." Under the gaze of everyone present, I turned and walked away. Just then, a sudden image flashed across the cruise ship's giant display screen. That scene drained the color from Fu Shiryue's normally aloof and composed face, and left me rooted to the spot in shock. It was footage of Fu Shiriwe and me in a hotel after he had gotten drunk. The video clip was perfectly timed. It didn't capture the part where I pushed Fu Shiriwe away and handed him over to Lin Yan, so, in the end, what everyone saw was just a scene of Fu Shiriwe, completely drunk and disoriented, being intimately close with me in the room, our arms around each other's necks. In an instant, everyone's gaze towards me turned strange and loaded with unspoken judgment. I clenched my fists tightly, gritting my teeth, wondering just who could have. Fu Shiriwe, meanwhile, suddenly turned to Lin Yan, grabbing her sleeve and pleading for an explanation. "Lin Yan, this is all a misunderstanding. You know all about it." Lin Yan then flashed him a disingenuous smile, raising her hand with an air of false gentility to stroke his hair. "Of course I believe you, it's just that today is our wedding anniversary celebration, and for something like this to happen." She deliberately fixed her gaze on me, and Fu Shiriwe finally caught on. He rushed over in an instant and slapped me across the face. "Jian Mingyue, how could you stoop so low?" The stinging slap landed on my cheek. He seemed to have put all his strength into it, leaving half my face swollen. Yet none of it hurt as much as the scornful, disgusted looks everyone was shooting my way. So it was her after all. I thought she'd finally given up and turned over a new leaf after finding out Shiryu had met his true love. Turns out she was just biding her time to stir up trouble. Does she really think a secretly recorded video like this could force Shiryu to choose her? How despicable. Shiryu really raised a viper in his bosom. If only she had died in that car crash with her parents all those years ago. If she can't have him, she'll destroy him. Someone like that is truly terrifying. Ever since I confessed my feelings to Fu Shiryu when I was 18, I've lost count of all the scornful and sarcastic remarks I've had to endure. Back then, knowing I was in the wrong, I just took the ridicule lying down, punishing myself in this masochistic way for the feelings I shouldn't have had for Fu Shiriyue, but now. I closed my eyes for a moment, forcing down the hurt and anger welling up inside me, and said, I told you, I didn't do it. Before I could even finish, another slap from Fu Shiriyue landed. You're still lying, who else could it be but you? This time, he hit me so hard my lips split and my ears were ringing. I suddenly remembered when I was bullied by thugs, and Fu Shiriyue stood up for me with such authority, declaring that no one in this world had ever dared to slap me, but now. He's finally gone back on his own word. With red-rimmed eyes, I looked at him, utterly broken. If I had truly intended to take advantage of you that day, I would never have handed you over to Lin Yan. As soon as the words left my mouth, a sudden realization dawned on me, and I turned my shocked gaze toward Lin Yan. After all, the only people who knew about this were me, Fu Shiriyue, and Lin Yan. Fu Shiriyue would never let a video like that get out, but why would Lin Yan, at that moment? Lin Yan spoke in a low, somber voice. Shiriyue, it seems Mingyue truly despises us. That single sentence instantly made everyone believe I was the one who secretly filmed the video, deliberately plotting to ruin Fu Shiriyue's reputation out of revenge. Lin Yan continued, confronting me with righteous indignation. Jian Mingyue, Shiriyue was practically your childhood sweetheart, and what have you given her in return? Have you even considered that Shiriyue is like a brother to you? With a video like this circulating, how do you expect people to view the Fu family from now on? How could you put Shiriyue in such an impossible position? With each of her instigating words, Fu Shiriyue took another step toward me. He said coldly, Jian Mingyue, I gave you a chance. It was you who didn't cherish it. Then, you leave me no choice. He had someone bring a whip and, in front of everyone, lashed me until my body was covered in wounds. Then, when there was scarcely an inch of unbruised flesh left on me, he had me tied to a rope and thrown into the sea. The bone-chilling seawater hit me again. But this time, it carried the thick, metallic scent of blood. Sharks patrolling nearby were drawn to the scent. 1, then 2, then 3. Until a whole school was circling around me. There used to be a saying online that sharks don't eat people, humans aren't on their menu, but sharks are drawn to the scent of blood, curious about how humans taste, so they take bite after bite, tasting until the person is dead. The will to survive made me clutch the rope tightly, thrashing desperately in the briny seawater. All around were only the waves churned up by the shark's swift attacks, and the chilling, deathly feel of accidentally brushing against them. I looked up to see Fu Shiriyue standing in the center with Lin Yan, while everyone on the yacht looked down on me from above. By the time Fu Shiriyue had his men fish me out of the water again, my legs and arms were covered in bloody bite marks. Fu Shiriyue had someone call the police. Before I was taken away by the officers, he held Lin Yan's hand and announced to everyone, please don't misunderstand, from now on, I have no connection whatsoever to Jian Mingyue. Lin Yan is the one I truly chose. Amidst the thunderous applause of the crowd, I was dragged away by a group of police officers, as wretched and exposed as a rat scurrying across the street. I heard that, in order to force me to talk, Fu Shiriyue secretly gave orders for me to be given special attention in my cell. Unfortunately for him, his clever little plan backfired. Given my severe injuries, the priority before I could be sent to prison was to make sure I wouldn't actually die. I was placed in a secret hospital ward, where I unexpectedly saw my aunt, who had returned to the country to collect me. Seeing my gaunt, tortured appearance, my aunt's tears fell like rain. Mingyue, it's all my fault. When your parents passed away, I was still struggling to establish myself abroad. I always thought entrusting you to the Fu family was for the best. Given our family's long-standing friendship and the fact that you and Fu Shiriyue grew up together, looking at things now, I should never have let the two of you meet in the first place. I lay in bed, my heart as cold as ashes, my body covered in wounds, yet none of them compared to the agony of being dismembered by Fu Shiriyue in my past life. I said flatly, it's fine now, it's all over. On the news playing across the TV wall in the hospital room, the interview with Fu Shiriyue and Lin Yan was still running. The two of them had publicly announced their engagement, with the wedding set to take place in Hong Kong in just 3 days. When asked why they were in such a hurry, Fu Shiriyue and Lin Yan ended up being rather coy and mysterious. We are each other's unwavering choice, and we simply couldn't wait to become a family as soon as possible, of course, Lin Yan then added with a touch of playful humor. It's also to prevent any ill-intentioned individuals from causing trouble. watching their interview video and the sweet scene of them smiling at each other, I managed a bitter smile of my own. In the end, I turned to my aunt, parting my hoarse, cracked, and bleeding lips to ask, "Auntie, can you help me with something? In my past life, when I saw Lin Yan's body lying in our wedding chamber, Fu Shiriyue merely ordered someone to handle the situation with a cold expression. Then gently held me in his arms to comfort me. He had lain low for 7 years, all for the sake of taking revenge on me. In that case, I'll just give this life back to him. After all, he and Lin Yan never stop harping on about how I was raised by the Fu family. My aunt first went to the Fu residence. In her capacity as my family and elder, she sincerely thanked them for raising me all these years. And then she met with Fu Shiriyue alone to offer him a heartfelt apology, out of respect for my aunt. Fu Shiriyue finally relented and dropped the charges against me. Furthermore, the police investigation failed to turn up any evidence linking me to the unauthorized video broadcast on the cruise ship. Consequently, I was ultimately acquitted and released. However, to prevent me from interfering with his upcoming marriage to Lin Yan again, Fu Shiriyue made another demand of my aunt. That means from now on, I never want to see him again. That night, my aunt arranged for someone from a faked death agency to meet me. She hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Do you realize that once the plan is set in motion, from that day forward, you'll be a dead person? I can no longer live rightfully, under the name of Jian Mingyue." I stared at my reflection in the mirror. In just a few days, I had become utterly haggard, a mere shadow of my former self. I gave a bitter smile and replied, "Precisely. That is exactly why I must die." I lifted my head, meeting the sunlight reflected in the mirror, and let out a soft sigh. This identity and the name Jian Mingyue were given to me by him. Only through my death can I truly be reborn. During those 3 days, I wasn't idle either. I was busy investigating the full truth behind the hotel incident. First, why was Fu Shiriyue so utterly wasted that day, at the Hot Spring Hotel? He was practically glued to Lin Yan all day long. An outsider simply had no chance to make a move. The night he came home completely wasted was also the night he was out drinking and soaking in the hot springs with Lin Yan until very late. Second, who on earth was the one who filmed that kind of video in the hotel? If Lin Yan had set it up in advance, then when she got Fu Shiriyue drunk, she was already on the verge of succeeding, so why would she leave Fu Shiriyue alone in the room, only for my past self to suffer that torment instead? Third, I know Lin Yan, she's selfish to the core. She would absolutely never be the type to take pills and kill herself just because she found out I was marrying Fu Shiriyue. So, in my past life, why did her corpse show up at my wedding to Fu Shiriyue? As it turns out, I actually managed to dig up a lead. Even though the hotel's surveillance footage had long been deleted, security cameras from nearby shops captured something that stormy night. They showed Lin Yan, who should have been getting hot and heavy with Fu Shiriyue in the hotel, sneaking out instead, wearing a raincoat. She didn't sneak back in until the first light of dawn the next day, and that made me recall a strange detail. When I returned to the hotel that morning, I saw Fu Shiriyue covered in those suggestive red marks, yet, on Lin Yan's body, which she always flaunted as so seductive, there wasn't a single trace to be found. So, who on earth was the one who spent that entire night tangled up with Fu Shiriyue in the hotel? Lin Yan went through so much trouble to drive me out of the Fu family. Why would she pull a stunt like this now? Of all times, the more I thought about the potential fallout, the more a chill of dread ran down my spine. That evening, my aunt sent me a video. In the footage, Lin Yan was a far cry from her current triumphant and glamorous self. Her once pristine suit was covered in shoe prints and dust. She was kneeling on the ground in a wretched state, kowtowing to someone. When the camera panned to that person's face, all the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fell into place. Watching the scene in the video, and seeing Lin Yan frantically kowtowing to that person, I let out a bitter, broken laugh. For 2 lifetimes, my past life and this one, a stormy saga of love and hate with Fu Shiriyue, and I was kept completely in the dark. So, from the very beginning, it was all a trap and a lie they set up. Lin Yan and I were roommates in college, back then. She was a poor student fresh from the mountains, and her timid, submissive nature made her an easy target for bullies. One time, when Fu Shiriyue came to the school to see me, he happened upon the notorious school bully, Qin Zhan, who had Lin Yan's face pressed to the ground. Qin was accusing her of dirtying his shoes and forcing her to crawl through his legs. It was Fu Shiriyue who saved Lin Yan, and that's how their story began. From that day on, Lin Yan pestered me constantly. begging for a chance to meet Fu Shiriwei in person so she could thank him for saving her. Back then, she would still put an arm around my shoulder with a look of utter resignation. "Oh, come on, I know he's your precious crush, your one and only. I just wanted to thank him in person, that's all. Relax, Shiriwei isn't my type at all, equals." And so, thanks to my introduction, she met Fu Shiriwei once again, and so, Lin Yan's interactions with Fu Shiriwei evolved. What began as a simple, just meeting to say thank you turned into them coincidentally running into each other for meals now and then. Eventually, it culminated in her standing before me, hand in hand with Fu Shiriwei, making a perfectly legitimate declaration. "Sorry, Mingyue, but Shiriwei and I are together now, as my best friend, and as someone so close to Shiriwei, you'll give us your blessing, won't you?" As for Qin Zhan, he had nursed a deep-seated grudge against Fu Shiriwei ever since that incident years ago, when Fu had publicly humiliated him in order to save Lin Yan. It all started with constant harassment in the business world, but Fu Shiriwei fought back fiercely every single time. Not only did Qin Zhan fail to gain any advantage, he ended up taking several hard falls. The conflict between him and Fu Shiriwei grew increasingly intense. Later, he even swore publicly that one day he would crush Fu Shiriwei beneath his heel. In their past lives, shortly after Lin Yan's death, Qin Zhan was killed in the power struggle within his own family, so, even though the two seemed to have no connection after graduation, no one could link Lin Yan's death to him. But now, it makes one wonder, what kind of deal did they really strike? Qin Zhan and Lin Yan arranged a secret meeting, and I, wearing a baseball cap, stealthily followed them. Amidst the neon lights and blaring music, I saw Lin Yan bowing and scraping as she poured wine for Qin Zhan, reporting something to him. "Young Master Qin, I've done everything exactly as you instructed. Shouldn't you return what you're holding to me now? You're not really going to make me marry him, are you?" As she spoke, she shed the gentle, considerate facade she always wore in front of Fu Shiriwei, her face now a mask of utter disdain and revulsion. "I can't stand being with him for another single day. Only someone with your unique taste would dare get involved with a man like that." Qin Zhan rested his elbow on the back of the sofa with an air of arrogant nonchalance, idly swirling the red wine in his glass with one hand. Hearing this, he shot Lin Yan a glare. "What would you know about it? For a man, the greatest pleasure lies in conquest. Is there anything more satisfying than seeing a man who usually glares at you with contempt and schemes against you at every turn, now writhing beneath you? Using every trick in the book to please you?" He picked up an envelope from the table and tossed it in front of Lin Yan, as if shooing away a begging dog. "You've done well this time, I'll let you keep your miserable life, for now." But, he paused, as if a delightful thought had crossed his mind, and licked his lips, savoring the taste of wine. "Your marriage to Fu Shiriwei must proceed. At tomorrow's wedding, I have a special gift in store for you too." 10. The wedding of Fu Shiriwei and Lin Yan was a grand and lavish affair. After all, she was marrying the one she truly loved. In the photos released by the media, Fu Shiriwei's face was beaming with a radiant smile. Due to Fu Shiriwei's ban, I wasn't able to attend her wedding. My aunt didn't make an appearance either. Instead, she stayed in the hotel room, her heart aching at the sight of my battered and injured state, tears streaming down her face. "Mingyue, your aunt is sorry she didn't get here sooner. This is all my fault, dear. Let's go right now. We won't ever come back. And I won't be going to Fu Shiriwei's wedding either." She stroked my hair and added, "The marriage I arranged for you is a good one. That young man has liked you since you were children. When you go abroad and see him, he'll be over the moon." I forced a bitter smile with my dry, pale lips. "Who would want someone who looks like I do now?" My aunt was being coy. "That young man," she said, "he'd like you even if it cost him his life. You'll understand once you meet him. After all, the Jian and Fu families were old friends." Even though my aunt didn't plan to show her face regarding Fu Shiriwei's marriage, she still had to notify them. But she accidentally got hold of my phone number. The moment the call connected, Fu Shiriwei's impatient voice came through. "Jian Mingyue, do you have to be so annoying? Don't you know what day it is? Lin Yan and I are getting married. Why won't you just give up? Didn't you learn your lesson last time?" That familiar, detestable accusation made my eyes drop in dejection. Aunt's face instantly turned cold. "Fu Shiriwei, when I wanted to take Mingyue abroad, you were the one who insisted you could take good care of her. And this is how you take care of her." Fu Shiriwei was caught completely off guard that it was her aunt on the other end of the line. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out for a long moment. Aunt let out a cold laugh. Don't you worry, once Mingyue leaves this time, she will never come back. From now on, you will never see her again." Fu Shiyue's breath hitched as he asked, "What do you mean?" To prevent my aunt and Fu Shiyue from arguing and exposing our plan, I quickly snatched the phone back and rasped out to her, "Fu Shiyue, if you still trust me, if you still care for even a shred of our past affection, then heed my warning, call off the wedding, you must not marry Lin Yan." Fu Shiyue pressed urgently, "What did you mean by that last statement? What do you mean, if you leave this time, I'll never see you again?" "Jian Mingyue, do you really have to seek attention this way?" she sneered. "I originally thought that after things calmed down a bit and you had properly reflected on your mistakes, Lin Yan and I would go abroad to talk to you. It seems that's unnecessary now." Her red lips parted, and she uttered a single, chilling sentence, "I might as well consider you dead out there." Even though I had already decided to leave, the pain still brought me to tears. I quickly raised my hand to dab at the corners of my eyes, forcing down all the anguish and bitterness. In the end, I said to her, "Fu Shiyue, I'll grant you your wish." As expected, Fu Shiyue's wedding was turned completely upside down. First, on Qin Zhan's side, just as Fu Shiyue's wedding was in full swing, with all the media capturing her happiest moment, Qin Zhan jumped onto the stage and announced he had a performance planned. Qin Zhan is Fu Shiyue's arch-nemesis and the person she despises most, showing up at the wedding today. He was clearly up to no good. Fu Shiyue certainly wasn't going to give him a chance to show off or ruin the occasion. But Qin Zhan just blinked and said mysteriously, "It's just a little surprise, you'll regret missing this for the rest of your life." Fu Shiyue opened his mouth to speak, but then my repeated warnings urging him to call off the wedding suddenly flashed through his mind. A vague sense of foreboding crept over him. While she was still lost in thought, Qin Zhan had already launched into his performance. He held a public auction, and the item up for bid was Fu Shiyue's underwear from that very night. The moment they saw the underwear, the guests erupted in murmurs, utterly bewildered. Fu Shiyue, however, stood frozen in shock, his whole body trembling, his face as pale as a sheet. Her gaze instinctively darted to Lin Yan, who stood beside her in a tailored suit, playing the part of the groom. She clenched her jaw so hard it trembled, nearly drawing blood. Of course, Lin Yan had no idea what was happening. He maintained that same tender, devoted expression as he asked her, "What's wrong, Shiyue?" "It's just a regular pair of underwear. Qin Zhan is just trying to cause a scene, let's just ignore him." And, the next moment, a sharp slap landed across her face. Amidst the gasps of the crowd, Fu Shiyue's voice was a ragged, furious demand, "Tell me what happened." In their past life, Qin Zhan and Lin Yan had already set this plan in motion, but my sudden appearance inadvertently threw a wrench in their plans. In this life, when Fu Shiyue woke up, he didn't find the clothes he had lost. He didn't think much of it at the time, simply assuming the chaos of that night was so intense that they'd been misplaced somewhere. But now, that deeply personal item of his has ended up in Qin Zhan's hands, and it was being publicly displayed and auctioned off at the very moment of his wedding. That leaves only two possibilities. First, Lin Yan is in cahoots with Qin Zhan. He was the one who gave the item to Qin. Second, the person that night wasn't Lin Yan. A wave of cold dread washed over Fu Shiyue. He didn't dare to think about it any further. On the stage, Qin Zhan watched the scene with immense satisfaction. He licked his lips, savoring the moment, and said meaningfully, "Boss Fu, I left in such a hurry that night, I didn't have time to return your property. Since it's your wedding day today, what do you think? Should I give this to you as a wedding gift, or would you prefer to buy it? And I'll give you the money as a cash gift." Realizing the implication of his words, Fu Shiyue was nearly driven mad. Impossible. This can't be happening. The wedding guests were also thrown into an uproar. After all, Fu Shiyue had always been the epitome of an aloof, untouchable male god. Having conquered the business world for years, the only thing that could possibly make him lose his composure like this was, everyone held their breath, not daring to entertain that possibility any further. Lin Yan finally realized Qin Zhan's plan and was instantly thrown into a panic. She rushed forward and shouted at him, "You promised me. You said you'd let me go once I helped you pull this off. How can you go back on your word?" Qin Zhan let out a soft, derisive chuckle and said in a low, deliberate voice, "I only agreed to give you the photos in my possession. I never said I wouldn't bring up what happened at the hotel that night." He shot a triumphant glance at Fu Shiyue. "As for what these photos are, and why they can make Lin Yan so compliant, Mr. Fu, aren't you the least bit curious?" "No one could figure it out," and frankly, I was just as baffled. After all, Fu Shiriwei adored Lin Yan so much. If she so much as hinted at wanting something, he'd give her gifts worth tens of millions, or even name the newly built Fu Group skyscrapers after her. What on earth could she possibly need from Qin Zhan that required her to suck up to him? However, what Qin Zhan revealed next turned Fu Shiriwei and Lin Yan's impending marriage into an absolute farce. The photo showed a dilapidated mountain village. A young man, about 18 or 19 years old, was holding an infant in swaddling clothes, and standing right beside him was none other than Lin Yan herself. At that moment, the whole truth came to light. Lin Yan had actually been married and had a child before. Her hometown was a poor mountain village where people married young. And Lin Yan was no exception. Before she passed the college entrance exam and left for the city to study, her family had arranged a marriage for her, and she soon had a child. But ever since she met Fu Shiriwei, in order to latch on to this wealthy woman, she completely severed all ties with her own family. The young man who married her was lured out by her sweet talk, believing they could live a good life as a family of three. Little did he know, Lin Yan would sell both him and their infant child to human traffickers. It was precisely by uncovering this evidence that Qin Zhan was able to make Lin Yan obey him. Poor Fu Shiriwei was kept completely in the dark in her past life, and even swore to take revenge on me for the rest of her days because of a woman like that. Lin Yan panicked, her usually gentle and serene expression twisting into something fierce. Qin Zhan, you promised you'd give me the photos. How can you go back on your word? Qin Zhan shamelessly snickered. I did give them to you. I just never said I wouldn't make a few extra copies. Besides, he clicked his tongue in disgust, even a vicious tiger doesn't devour its own cubs. A beast like you, who'd abandon everything and even sell your own son just to climb the social ladder and latch onto a rich woman, exposing you is nothing less than delivering divine justice. Confronted with this, Fu Shiriwei also lost his mind. He lunged forward and slapped Lin Yan across the face again, his bloodshot eyes trembling with rage. How dare you? How could you possibly dare? Do you have any idea what the price is for betraying and deceiving me? With her misdeeds exposed, Lin Yan dropped the act entirely. She ripped the bride corsage from her chest and let out a contemptuous snort. Give me a break. You should be grateful I've managed to stomach this charade with you for this long. Did you really think I didn't know? I was just a tool for you to provoke Jian Mingyue from the very beginning, to drive her away. You kept convincing yourself it was me you liked. Tell me, after all that self-deception, you don't actually believe your own lie, do you? Lin Yan let out a few hysterical, cold laughs, then narrowed her eyes mockingly. If that were really the case, why would I go to such lengths to deal with her? Search your heart. Who is it you truly love? That sentence completely stunned Fu Shiriwei. After the truth came to light, I remembered all the things he had done to me. He immediately staggered on the stage and fell to the ground in a humiliating heap. He gasped for breath in ragged, labored gulps, tears welling up in his eyes as he murmured, Mingyue, Jian Mingyue, how could I possibly like her? At this point, who Fu Shiriwei truly likes is no longer important. On stage, Lin Yan was like a lunatic who had finally snapped after a long period of pent-up pressure. She continued her hysterical tirade. I'm young and accomplished. If it weren't for the money, if it weren't for the fact that Jian Mingyue likes you and I refuse to lose to her, why on earth would I have gotten close to you? Yes, I deliberately targeted and bullied Jian Mingyue. So what? Only by driving her away would you listen to me and hand over all your money. Who asked her to always be in the way? Such an eyesore. Fu Shiriwei was weeping uncontrollably, his hands pressed tightly over his ears. Stop, please, I'm begging you, stop talking. Lin Yan let out a triumphant, scornful snort. For you, I abandoned my own husband and child, day in and day out. I've been swallowing my disgust, flattering you, coddling you. Do you have any idea how difficult that's been for me? How hard I've tried, and you, what have you ever done? I admit it, I was the one who secretly filmed and leaked that video from the yacht that night, but I just wanted the money. I never wanted to marry you. I thought you'd have some self-respect. I thought after a scandal like that, you'd call off the wedding. It was my chance to get free, and to make you hate Jian Mingyue forever. But I never imagined you could be this ruthless. She advanced on Fu Shiriwei step by step, looking down at him as she delivered her final pronouncement. You're the one who threw Jian Mingyue to the sharks. You're the one who had her arrested and gave the order to have her taken care of. Fu Shiriwei, do you really think this charade will convince me, or even yourself, that what you feel for her is pure hatred and disgust? without a single trace of anything else. Fu Shiriwa lowered his head in anguish. Stop it. But Lin Yan suddenly grabbed his wrist, shouting. Then why did you sneak off to the hospital to see her without telling anyone? Why did you hide from everyone to cry when you saw how hurt she was? Fu Shiriwa, I bet even this wedding is just part of your plan to convince yourself and drive Jian Mingyue away, isn't it? Finally, Fu Shiriwa exploded in rage. He violently wrenched his hand free and slapped her across the face with a sharp crack. I told you to stop. Are you even listening to me? His eyes widened in that split second. He fell into a stunned silence before squeezing his eyes shut with a sob. You're right, I do have feelings for Mingyue. Amidst the stunned silence of everyone present, Fu Shiryu's pupils trembled as he began to painfully lay bare the deepest secrets of his heart. Because I was afraid of ruining her, and of ruining myself, so I ran away, pushing her away time and again by hurting her. He slumped to the floor, utterly defeated, and murmured. I was the one who convinced myself it was you I loved. I kept telling myself over and over that I felt nothing but disgust for Jian Mingyue, that I should reject her and push her away, but it turns out, he lifted his head, his handsome face streaked with tears, I really do like her. 13. The wail of police sirens arrived, and Lin Yan was taken away. The grand wedding they had performed in front of everyone thus became the biggest joke, yet, Fu Shiriwa didn't seem to care in the slightest. She murmured under her breath, the one I love is Jian Mingyue. I'm going to find her. I'm going to tell her I love her. She removed her veil and, under the gaze of everyone present, began walking step by step toward the wedding hall's exit. At that moment, a procession carrying a coffin blocked her path. Fu Shiriwa froze instantly, rooted to the spot. He murmured, who is this? Upon hearing my name, he screamed hysterically, impossible, you're lying to me, all of you are lying. Stumbling and disheveled, he rushed to the coffin and whispered, how could Jian Mingyue possibly be dead? She promised she would protect me for a lifetime. The staff member from the faked death agency lowered their gaze and replied with practiced composure, those were your words, sir, just consider her dead out there. Miss Jian also told you, as you wished. Remembering that previous phone call, Fu Shiryu's body jolted, then began to tremble with disbelief. He stared fixedly at the coffin, his mouth opening and closing. With each successive blow, his face grew paler and paler, his hand clutching tightly at his chest. The next moment, he broke into a heart-wrenching sob and hurled himself desperately against the coffin. With a sickening thud, his forehead was smeared with blood, and the coffin lurched uncontrollably, spilling the corpse within onto the ground. It was a charred corpse, burned beyond all recognition. Its original features completely obliterated. The employee from the pseudocide agency continued, Miss Jian took her own life by self-immolation this morning at the Xinghua Villa. They handed an envelope to Fu Shiriwa, saying, this is the only thing Miss Jian left for you. The envelope was opened, and from it fell a star made of crystal. The moment he recognized the shape of that star, Fu Shiriwa froze in place, finally understanding why I had chosen that spot. Xinghua Villa was where my parents once lived. After their deaths, the company was on the brink of bankruptcy and collapse. Our former home was also seized by the bank and put up for auction. It was Fu Shiriwa who couldn't bear to see me lose a home filled with memories. He spent a fortune to win the auction for the house and gave it to me. That year, at 18, I created a starry sky there. I inlaid the ceiling of the villa with crystals of every color. It was my gift to Fu Shiriwa, a universe of stars. I still remember Fu Shiriwa standing motionless in the living room, gazing up as the starlight shifted with the light, moved to the point of tears welling in his eyes. The star I left for her was one he had personally set in place that very day. This is also the star I gave to Mingyue. It's the brightest one in the Big Dipper. In ancient times, people used it to find their way, just as I am for Mingyue, no matter where she goes in the future. Who she meets, or what experiences she has, seeing this star will always guide her home. But now, I've returned his star to her. I don't need him anymore. Fu Shiriwa clutched the crystal star so tightly in his hand that its sharp edges cut into his palm. I hurt you too deeply. Would you rather die than stay with me? He let out a bitter laugh towards the sky, then finally couldn't hold back and spat out a mouthful of blood before collapsing unconscious to the ground. Amidst the domestic news storm, my aunt and I touched down in a foreign land. There, I met the man my aunt had spoken of, the one who had supposedly liked me for ages and was a potential match. The moment I laid eyes on Bai Chen, I thought my vision was playing tricks on me. Bai Chen and I were elementary school classmates. Back then, he was in poor health, a sickly kid through and through, his peers never wanted to play with him, and at school, most of his classmates were bullies who picked on him. Time and again, I was the one who stood up for him and protected him. That's why Bai-chen developed feelings for me. During university, he came to confess his feelings to me, but I turned him down. Fu Shiriwa later turned him down on my behalf, saying he didn't want romantic entanglements to interfere with my studies and future prospects. Later, Bai-chen was taken abroad by his parents. Before leaving, he came to say goodbye to me. His eyes red from crying. He said his parents had arranged a new marriage prospect for him overseas, and that she was a very good person. He said he knew I liked Fu Shiriwa, and since he had truly let me go, he sincerely wished for me to get what I wanted. But now, as I looked at him standing quietly before me, I was momentarily lost in a daze. It was as if, in the past, he had deceived me with some kind of well-intentioned lie. At that moment, Bai-chen gave me a faint smile and spoke, "Mingyue, I did lie to you. I never got married, and there was never any fiancé. I knew your heart belonged to Mr. Fu, and I didn't want to put you in an awkward position." So, as he spoke, his gaze fell upon the crisscrossing scars on my body, and his eyes instantly reddened. His hand trembled as he traced the savage scar on my arm, left by the shark's bite, and his tears finally fell. "I thought I was securing your happiness. I thought I was giving you what you wanted, Mingyue. Why would he treat you like that? Why didn't you ever think to come to me?" Seeing Bai-chen weeping like this now, I finally understood what my aunt had meant. The young man I was matched with in the marriage arrangement loves me with all his heart. Even in death, he would still adore me. I sighed and gave him a bittersweet smile. It's all in the past. I've let go of the past and am determined to start my new life. I told Bai-chen everything that had happened back home and arranged a new identity for myself abroad. From this day forward, I am no longer Jian Mingyue, but my aunt's adopted daughter. I will re-enter society as the Shin family's new heiress. Bai-chen, however, was hesitant and worried. "I'm afraid we won't be able to keep the domestic affairs under wraps for long." I knew it couldn't be kept secret for long. After all, the plan itself was full of holes, with Fu Shiryua's connections. Once he recovers his wits, he will undoubtedly investigate the identity of the person who brought the coffin into the wedding. If I had really died, my aunt wouldn't have rushed to arrange to go abroad without even inquiring about my funeral arrangements. But even if he finds out, even if he chases me abroad, what good would it do? The world is vast, and not everything can be undone. I won't spare him another glance. Hearing my plan, Bai-chen blushed. He quietly took my hand, biting his lip. "Mingyue, I know you don't have feelings for me right now, but I can wait. When you've completely forgotten about Mr. Fu and are willing to accept me, then let's be together." I ended up with Bai-chen. He's a wonderful young man, who would watch me work busily with a quiet, fond smile. When I'm worn out and weary, he brings me a cup of warm, fragrant tea and a box of sweet cake he baked himself. Anything I give him, even a simple bookmark handed to him in passing, he treasures with great care. When I'm sick and miserable, he'll push through his own frailty to stay up all night, watching over me. Waking up in the morning, I saw him asleep with his head resting on the edge of my bed. The warm morning sun filtered through the gap in the curtains, falling gently on his face, so peaceful and beautiful. In many of those moments, I was lost in a daydream, thinking how wonderful it would be to spend a lifetime just like this, and just as we had anticipated. The situation back home unfolded exactly as we predicted. It wasn't long before Fu Shiriwa discovered that the body from the self-immolation at the wedding that day wasn't mine. Those people are from a fake death agency. They specialize in helping people disappear by staging their deaths. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that on the same flight as Ms. Shin's aunt, there was a young person who bore a striking resemblance to Miss Jian. When the grainy surveillance screenshot from the airport was placed before Fu Shiriwa, his tears began to fall once more. These past few days, he had nearly driven himself mad. The exposure of what happened with Qin Zhan at the hotel, even if he ignored the gossip swirling outside, he couldn't escape the judgment of his own conscience, so he kept locking himself in the bathroom, scrubbing his body raw. He scrubbed until his pale skin was raw and bleeding. As if he could scour away the filth that clung to him, he hadn't shown up at the office for days. Those who had long coveted the Fu Corporation saw their chance and pounced, sending the stock price into a nosedive. The entire company was on the brink of collapse, while a storm of blood and violence raged outside. Yet, none of this mattered to Fu Shiriwa. The only thing he wanted to know was whether the person who died at the wedding that day was actually me. He refused to give up, even if there was only the faintest glimmer of hope. So, when Fu Shiriwe found out I was still alive, his first reaction wasn't anger at being deceived, but tears of overwhelming joy. He covered his face, nearly collapsing to his knees on the carpet. I knew it, he choked out. I just knew it. Mingyue couldn't be gone. Heaven wouldn't be so cruel as to take her. He wanted to fly overseas to find me. But his assistant hesitated before reminding him, President Fu, the company is in a very unstable state right now. Everyone is waiting for your return to take charge. Don't you think it's time to? But Fu Shiriwe cut him off with a hoarse, strained voice. In this world, nothing is more important than Mingyue. Those material possessions, if they're gone, we can earn them back. But if Mingyue is gone, he raised his bloodshot eyes, cradling the necklace around his neck. Inside the pendant hung a photograph of the two of us. I used to care too much about what others thought, too much about those external judgments. That's why I lost my bright moon in the first place. Now, I've only just managed to get her back after losing her. If I miss this chance again, I swear, it would kill me. To come abroad and see me, Fu Shiriwe went to great lengths with his preparations. He was wearing the outfit I had specially designed for him when I was 18. The prayer beads that had fallen into Lin Yan's hands were long gone, thrown away by her. Fu Shiriwe put up a reward of 100 million, mobilizing the entire city to search through every trash can and dumpster one by one, until they were finally recovered. They say on the day the beads were found, Fu Shiriwe held them in his hands and wept uncontrollably. I just knew it, our meeting was destined by fate. If I could get these beads back, I can get you back too. And before setting out, he even went into the kitchen himself, cutting up several of his fingers, to make my favorite pastries. But he never could have imagined that after rushing all the way abroad to see me, what he would find was my wedding to Bai Chen. Seeing me standing there in my wedding dress, Fu Shiriwe was completely stunned. Just as I was about to slip the wedding ring onto Bai Chen's finger, I heard him let out a heart-wrenching cry, Jian Mingyue, you can't marry him, out of the corner of my eye. I saw his eyes, wide with shock and glistening red, and his jaw clenched tight, trembling slightly. The sudden appearance of such a person at the wedding had the guests whispering and pointing. Fu Shiriwe used to care about face and reputation above all else. That's why, when I confessed to him at 18, he was so shocked and furious he could have killed me. But now, he was walking toward me, step by step, heedless of everything. Jian Mingyue, you promised you'd only ever love me in this lifetime. You said you'd never give up on me, even if it meant dying. So why? He glanced at Bai Chen, who was in formal wear and holding my hand tightly, and asked, his composure shattered, and now you're going to marry him. The next moment, my aunt stepped in front of him and let out a sigh. Mr. Fu, today is my goddaughter's wedding day. Please show some restraint. Fu Shiriwe let out a bitter, mirthless laugh. Self-respect. In the past, I had too much of that. That's why I refused to acknowledge Mingyue's love, why I lost her. But now, I don't care about anything anymore. I've thrown all caution to the wind. His gaze swept past my aunt's shoulder, locking directly onto mine, as he murmured, I only want Mingyue. I'd give my life for her. My aunt, helpless, could only try again. Mingyue is dead. The one getting married today is my adopted daughter. Fu Shiriwe gritted his teeth and roared, you're lying. That was clearly Mingyue. I've spent every day with her for over a decade. How could I possibly not recognize her? He then turned to me, his voice choked with emotion, and asked, Jian Mingyue, search your heart and tell me, who are you really? Can you truly stand before everyone and claim you're not Jian Mingyue, that you don't know me at all? When Fu Shiriwe appeared, Bai Chen tensed up for a moment and instinctively tightened his grip on my hand. I patted his hand reassuringly and gave him a smile. We have to face this sooner or later anyway. Besides, I want to make a clean break with the past, so I can come to you with a clear conscience. I walked towards Fu Shiriwe. Seeing me approach, a flicker of hope crossed his face, as if he thought I'd had a change of heart. But the next moment, I stopped in my tracks beside my aunt and called out to him from afar. Do you know why I staged that whole scene back home? Fu Shiriwe answered urgently, with a note of elation. Yes, of course I know. You wanted me to see my own heart clearly, and now I understand everything. It's you I like, it's you I'm certain of, he pleaded, his voice choked with tears. Mingyue, I'm willing to let go of everything. Let's start over, please. I let out a scornful laugh. The very thing I once dreamed of, the thing I would have given my life for without a second thought. Now it stands before me, begging and humbled. Yet I no longer want it. Fu Shiriwe, you're mistaken. The reason I died back home was because I wanted a fresh start. The old Jian Mingyue is dead. All the love and hate from that time, everything, is sealed away in the past, and now, I glanced back at Bai Yichen standing on the stage in his formal attire, a smile spreading across my face as I said, I have my own future now. Of course, Fu Shiriwe wouldn't believe that I had fallen for someone else, after all. I had loved him too deeply before, even when I stopped, it must have seemed like a deliberate lie. Mingyue, you must be lying to me. How could you not have feelings for me? I get it now. You're still upset about what happened back home, aren't you? You're punishing me, trying to get a rise out of me. Is that it? Fu Shiriwe took one last look at Bai Yichen, then reached his hand out to me. No matter how you treat me, it's fine, don't marry him. Give me a chance to make things right. A chance for us to start over. Bai Yichen and I exchanged our vows right under Fu Shiriwe's watchful gaze. When I slipped the ring onto Bai Yichen's finger, he still managed to keep his composure, convincing himself in his heart that I had hired Bai Yichen, that this whole wedding was just a charade, a carefully staged illusion I'd concocted to win him over. Even as Bai Yichen and I shared a sweet, tender kiss, surrounded by the blessings of our family and friends, he was still lying to himself. It's all a lie, every bit of it, just to deceive him, just to make his heart ache. Could I really go this far? It was just acting. What's a kiss in the grand scheme of things? He just stood there, frozen, until the wedding was over and Bai Yichen and I drove back to our new home. That night, it poured with rain. Fu Shiriwe stood guard at the villa's entrance, staring blankly at the lit window on the second floor. He didn't move until that light went out. At which point he collapsed and was taken to the hospital. I went to the hospital to see Fu Shiriwe for the last time. Fu Shiriwe wept with joy, clutching my hand tightly. Mingyue, I knew it. I knew you wouldn't be so cruel to me, but I coldly shook off his hand. I'm not here for you. I flung a stack of newspapers at him, all filled with reports of him causing a scene at my wedding abroad. If you still don't get it, let me be perfectly clear. I don't have feelings for you anymore. To me now, you're just a stranger. The person I truly love and chose as my husband. Your actions, however, have caused serious disruption to our lives. I don't want my husband to worry, and as his wife, I owe him an explanation, so, please don't come looking for me anymore. Her words hit Fu Shiriwe like a physical blow, leaving him rooted to the spot. Utterly stunned, he broke down in tears, shaking his head repeatedly. Why, are you getting back at me? Is that it? Because I hurt you, you're pushing me away in the exact same way. I looked down at him from my vantage point and finally let out a sigh. You're wrong, no matter how much you hurt me before, I never left. That was because I loved you too much. But now, a faint smile touched my lips as I murmured, I want to love myself now, so I'm leaving you. Fu Shiriwe, remember how I used to be. I don't want to treat you that way, but if you refuse to see reason, you'll force me to become that person again. After that, I never saw Fu Shiriwe again. Fresh off the plane in a new country, everything required adjustment. On top of that, the company my aunt entrusted to me was keeping me swamped. Whenever I had a spare moment, I would spend it with my husband, savoring the precious time of our newlywed life. I won't let unnecessary people ruin the mood anymore. Fu Shiriwe came to see me many times, his body covered in crisscrossing whip marks and even stab wounds that looked like bloody holes. Jian Mingyue, I paid back everything I owed you. You should be satisfied now. The scene was so horrifying that the police took him away. I also requested he be banned from entering the country on the grounds of harassment, and just like that, Fu Shiriwe was driven out. I heard that not long after returning to his home country, the Fu group went bankrupt, the Fu family's assets were seized, and now, Fu Shiriwe is like a homeless, beaten dog, unable to accept the truth. Fu Shiriwe plunged a knife into his own stomach. For the sake of our past friendship, I arranged for him to be treated at a psychiatric hospital back home. Several months later, I received a call from the hospital director, informing me that Fu Shiriwe had escaped from the psychiatric hospital under cover of night. By the time he was found, he had already stopped breathing. He died in the ruins of the Xinghua villa. When they found him, he was clutching a star tightly in his hand, the very one I had returned to him before I went abroad. Mr. Fu has no family left back home. Would you consider returning to handle the funeral arrangements? As the voice came through the phone, I stared blankly out the window at the glittering night sky, a tumult of emotion swirling inside me. Finally, I said, that won't be necessary. find a burial plot and lay him to rest. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from outside the study. Bai Chen must have heard the news from back home as well. He pushed the door open and called out anxiously, "Mingyue." I turned around, looked at him, and a gentle smile bloomed on my face as I soothed softly, "It's all over now." Bai Chen was stunned for a moment, then understood instantly. His eyes reddened, and he threw himself into my arms. The soft light spilled down, illuminating us in our embrace. At this moment, the peace and happiness we had fought so hard for felt especially precious, something we cherished beyond measure. Story 2, Shinyansi grew up together with my elder sister as childhood sweethearts. Later, when my family fell from grace, he proposed to marry me instead. Everyone said that I was just a substitute for my deceased elder sister. After hearing it so many times, I really started to believe it myself, until he died trying to save me. In this new life, I heard the remarks about me being a substitute again, but this time, along with those remarks, there was another voice as well. Spreading rumors is easy, but refuting them takes so much effort. I've said it 800 times that I've never liked Wenbei at all. I'm already annoyed that I can't catch up with my wife, and now you guys are causing trouble. It's been a year since we got married. When will my wife be willing to scold me a few more times? I never knew that Shinyansi could be so talkative. I was standing in the banquet hall, holding his arm. In one ear, there were the idle gossip and whispers from the people around that drifted in from time to time. In the other ear, there was all of Shinyansi's endless muttering. What else do I need to do to clarify this? Every time someone asks me who I really like, I say it's Wennan. We're not twins. We don't look alike at all. How could she be a substitute? I wonder which genius came up with this rumor. Have they read too many romance novels? If they have the guts, they should come and say it to my face. Ugh, I'm really fed up. I already felt guilty about taking advantage of the Wen family's misfortune to get Wennan to marry me. Normally, I don't even dare to talk to her too much, for fear that she'll be annoyed with me and want to divorce me. But these people are still secretly causing trouble for me. I really want to acquire all of them. I was still immersed in the confusion of suddenly being able to hear Shinyansi's inner thoughts, but when I heard this sentence, I couldn't help it and looked at him in shock. Wait, the reason he's been so cold and distant towards me usually is that he doesn't dare to talk to me too much. I really thought it was because he was afraid that if I talked too much, I wouldn't be like my elder sister anymore. I accidentally stared at him a bit absent-mindedly. Shinyansi's inner muttering suddenly stopped. My wife is looking at me. Isn't she angry? Forget about the acquisition. I might as well just kill them all. He slightly tilted his head and looked at me. He still had that cold and distant expression. Are you tired? If you don't want to stay, we can go back first. I let out an ah and nodded subconsciously. Shinyansi immediately perfunctorily said a few words to the people beside him who were trying to curry favor. Then he made an excuse and took me away. In the car on the way home, Shinyansi was resting with his eyes closed. I propped my head up and looked outside the car, still feeling that everything was not real. I opened my eyes this morning and found that I had been reborn. I was reborn just 1 year after I married Shinyansi, in my previous life. On the day of our 3rd wedding anniversary, we were framed and set up. Shinyansi took 2 bullets in order to save me. He dragged his injured body and hid me in a crevice, while he went alone to lead away those kidnappers, and not long before that, he had just proposed a divorce to me. Going further back, we hadn't seen each other for almost a year. Shinyansi risked his life, but I still didn't survive either. I was found by the kidnappers and taken to the site of Shinyansi's body. In the end, I died with him. When I just woke up this morning, I thought I had just had a very long dream. However, the pain of being on the verge of death was still imprinted in my soul. It made it impossible for me to deceive myself no matter what, so I could only accept this fact that I had been reborn. I spent a whole day digesting the news of my rebirth, and in the evening, I was shocked by Shinyansi's inner thoughts again. Thinking of the words I heard at the banquet just now, I couldn't help but turn my gaze to Shinyansi. I remember that in the first 2 years of our marriage in my previous life, our relationship was actually not bad. Although we weren't particularly close, we also weren't as incompatible as the outside world rumored. To put it bluntly, just as Shinyansi said in his inner thoughts, he rarely talked to me, but he would quietly do some things for me behind the scenes. But at that time, I had heard too many rumors about being a substitute, so in my heart, I defaulted that everything he did was to make up for the regrets of Wenbei. When my family had an accident back then, I was the only one who survived. It was Shinyensi who helped me when I was at my most helpless, so I decided to repay him, no matter what he wanted. I once tried to imitate Wenbei's words and deeds and deliberately learned her dressing style. Shinyensi noticed and seriously stopped me. He said, "I don't like Wenbei, just be Wennan." So I stopped imitating Wenbei and just showed a kind of docile obedience towards Shinyensi. But the more docile and obedient I was, the more obscure and difficult to discern his gaze became when he looked at me. Later, he appeared in front of me less and less often, until I didn't see him for a year, and finally he proposed a divorce to me. People really see things very differently from different perspectives. In my previous life, I always thought that he had come to his senses, got tired of me, and decided to stay away from me because he knew that I could never become Wenbei after all. But now it seems that things are not so simple, and those robbers, I must solve them as early as possible in this life. For a moment, all kinds of messy information filled my mind. Before I could figure anything out, Shinyensi's inner thoughts forcefully interrupted again. Why has Nan been staring at me? Is there something on my face? I should have listened to the styling team and made myself look more refined tonight. What if I'm so ugly that I scare her? No, I'd better hide. Next time, I'll definitely not be too lazy and will take the trouble to do my styling properly. As soon as his words fell, I watched as he turned his head to the other side. If I couldn't hear his inner thoughts, I would definitely think that he was disgusted with me. I was both angry and amused. I originally didn't want to pay attention to him, but by chance, I glanced and saw that he was rubbing his fingers. I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, after he stuffed me into the crevice to hide, he quickly bent down and kissed me. I was so tired and scared at that time that I was slow to respond to his comforting kiss for a long time. However, because of our position, I happened to be able to see his hand in front of him, which seemed to be rubbing his fingers unconsciously. This seemed to be a little gesture he would do when he was nervous. Thinking of the way he forced a smile at me with blood all over his body in my previous life, my heart suddenly softened. I don't know why, but the thought of ignoring him that I originally had just couldn't hold up anymore. I sighed resignedly in my heart. After a little thought, I suddenly said, "Shinyensi, look at me." Shinyensi's body visibly stiffened for a moment. He slowly turned his head, and his delicate face was full of coldness and stiffness that kept people at a distance. But now when I look at him, I always feel that there seems to be an imperceptible tension hidden under his expressionless face. His mental activities also confirmed my feeling. My goodness, did Nan just order me? I haven't heard her speak to me in this tone since we were in university. I really want to cry. What should I do? Will Nan believe me if I say that the wind got into my eyes? No. Why did she suddenly call me like this? Isn't she thinking of doing something stupid? Or is she going to divorce me? When Shinyensi thought of the last part, I clearly saw his pupils contract. I couldn't help but chuckle. I really didn't expect that Shinyensi had so many thoughts in his heart. It was really unexpected, and it was as if I was just starting to get to know him again. Shinyensi didn't say anything and just kept looking at me quietly. I ignored those noisy and anxious thoughts in his heart, followed my memories, and slowly said word by word, "Shinyensi, what's the point of you paying to keep a styling team?" I casually found an excuse and started trying to regain the feeling of being Wennan. Don't you remember when President Chen was seized upon by his opponent regarding his dressing issue and was said to be disrespectful to the Cooperative Party? My tone wasn't very polite, and these were words that a gentle and polite person like Wenbei would definitely not say. Didn't I tell you that when you're out, your image is the image of the company? Don't think I didn't notice how perfunctory you were today. I watched as Shinyensi couldn't help it. His eyes slowly widened, and his body involuntarily sat up a little straighter. I curled the corners of my mouth, and there was an indescribable sense of relief in my heart. I haven't been Wennan for a long time, but it feels really good to be Wennan again. Shinyensi was so shocked that even his inner thoughts went silent. I didn't care either. I crossed my arms, casually leaned back on the chair, and raised my eyebrows to look at him. "You should reflect on this situation when you go back today, and I'm tired. You'd better take good care of me tonight." I saw that Shinyensi's expression had completely turned into a daze. He was looking at me as if he had been stunned. Just then, the driver drove the car to the doorstep. I opened the car door. Before getting out, I suddenly turned around and squinted my eyes at him with a smile. "If you don't take good care of me, I'll beat you to death tomorrow." After saying that, I turned around and got out of the car without hesitation. I had just taken 2 steps when there was a thud sound from behind. and then came Shinyansi's exclamation, "Goodness, where have you taken me? Is this heaven?" After I entered the house, I first went to remove my makeup and change my clothes. When I went back to the living room again, Shinyansi was still standing at the door. He was fumbling with his tie, not knowing whether to untie it or not, with his eyes slightly lowered, just looking at his appearance. It seemed as if he was pondering some big business deal worth billions. He had a kind of serious and mature charm. If you just looked at his appearance, "What's wrong with Nan today? What does she want me to do? It doesn't matter if she beats me to death." But it's been more than a year since the Wen family's accident, and this is the first time I've seen her so relaxed like today. If I spoil her mood because of me, I might as well just end my own life. No, even if I die, I have to find the source of that substitute rumor and die with him. I stood in the middle of the living room, listening to Shinyansi's inner thoughts with great interest. It was interesting, but I was also afraid that if he kept thinking like this, he would really end his own life with the tie. So after listening for a while, I still walked over. "What's wrong? Is the tie sticky? You've been trying to untie it for 20 minutes. I deliberately lightened my steps, and Shinyansi was indeed so scared that his whole body stiffened. He almost reflexively tore off the tie. Then he started hanging up his clothes as if nothing had happened and said indifferently, "I'm thinking about something." I just watched him pretend. It wasn't until there were nervous voices in his heart that I hooked the corners of my mouth with a bit of malicious pleasure. "I'm hungry. Can you make me something to eat? I'll call someone to deliver it." As he said that, he was about to pick up his phone. I quickly stopped him. "It's not that troublesome. You can just cook me a bowl of noodles." I curved my eyebrows and eyes. "Of course, if it tastes too bad, you don't have to come back to the room tonight." After saying that, regardless of Shinyansi's slightly stunned gaze, I turned around and went back upstairs. I stood at the door of the study, hesitated for a moment, and then pushed the door open. In my previous life, I always regarded myself as an outsider and cautiously and restrainedly maintained a distance from Shinyansi, even though Shinyansi had said that in this house there was no place I couldn't go and nothing I couldn't touch, but I still stubbornly stuck to my bottom line. During the 3 years of our married life, I only used things that I bought with my own money, and I didn't enter any room on the second floor except the bedroom, especially a place with strong privacy like the study. I wouldn't even take an extra look at it. There was only one time when I entered his study, and then I saw. After a little thought, I took out a pink diary from a pile of thick reference books. According to my memory, this was Wenbei's diary. In my previous life, I firmly believed in that substitute rumor because I accidentally saw this diary, a man keeping the diary of another deceased woman. It's really hard not to associate it with feelings, but now I think things might not be so simple, because at the last moment of my previous life before I died, I vaguely seemed to hear those kidnappers mention words like "that little girl from the Wen family" and "where is she hidden." I'm sure that "that little girl from the Wen family" didn't refer to me. Could it be that Wenbei's death wasn't an accident? I stared at the diary in my hand, a bit lost in thought. In fact, as soon as I found out that I could hear Shinyansi's inner thoughts and confirmed that he really didn't like Wenbei, I thought of this diary. If Shinyansi didn't like Wenbei, then it was really strange for him to keep Wenbei's diary. I had an intuition that there might be something else recorded in this diary. Just as I was still hesitating whether to try to unlock the password, suddenly, there were footsteps in the corridor outside the study. Almost instinctively, I stuffed the diary back in its place and randomly took out a book and opened a page. Shinyansi walked to the door and knocked. Still in that flat tone, "The noodles are ready, come and eat." I casually hummed, and endured my guilty conscience as I stuffed the book away casually. I was just about to say something to cover up my guilty conscience, but the moment I turned my head, I accidentally met Shinyansi's eyes. His gaze was as calm and peaceful as ever. Looking deeper, it seemed to contain infinite tolerance. Just as he said, in this house, there was no place I couldn't go and nothing I couldn't touch. The heart that had just sunk seemed to be pulled up again by a gentle gravitational force. It was light and a bit unreal. Even more amazingly, I couldn't hear Shinyansi's inner thoughts at all now. He wasn't thinking about anything. Everything he showed was the most real thought in his heart. My shoulders suddenly relaxed. I realized again that Shinyansi could be trusted. Since that's the case, it's better to be more straightforward. I walked up to Shinyansi, smiled at him, and said directly, "Let's eat." After that, we can have a chat. As soon as I finished speaking, Shinyensi's heart instantly exploded. Have a chat? Chat about what? Divorce. I knew there was something wrong with Nan being so abnormal today. What should I do if my wife wants to divorce me? I don't want to live anymore. Should I work overtime tonight? And also tomorrow? Maybe I should just live in the company for this month. Or even for the whole half year. No divorce, no divorce. Heavenly Emperor and Guanyin Bodhisattva, please tell this disciple how to stop my wife from divorcing me. I was suddenly bombarded by Shinyensi's inner thoughts. When I finally listened clearly, I felt rather amused and frustrated at the same time. What are you standing there for? Let's go. I simply reached out and grabbed his wrist, pulling him downstairs. I'll talk to you about Wenbei after dinner, don't think too much. The moment I grabbed his wrist, Shinyensi's inner thoughts abruptly stopped. After that, he showed an unusual docility throughout the whole process. When I mentioned Wenbei, he just softly responded with an The noodles cooked by Shinyensi unexpectedly tasted quite good. I didn't hold back and gave him a lot of praise. I praised him so much that while he was washing the dishes, he was thinking about not asking the auntie to come anymore and that he would take care of all the household chores. After Shinyensi finished tidying up, he sat upright on the single sofa next to me. I looked at him, still trying to organize my words on how to start, but he suddenly said, I have never liked Wenbei, and I didn't treat you as a substitute for her. I paused for a moment, a bit surprised that he would take the initiative to bring up this matter. In my previous life, except for the time when he stopped me from imitating Wenbei's words and deeds, we had never openly discussed this issue. Even during the 3 years of our marriage, the number of our serious conversations could be counted on 2 hands. It was precisely because of this that those people had the opportunity to take advantage of the situation and deceive me out. After a moment of contemplation, I was even more certain that the most pressing matter was to solve the problem of the lack of information communication between Shinyensi and me. Without hesitation, I came straight to the point and said, there's something I want to apologize to you for. Shinyensi immediately frowned. Nan is apologizing to me. Could it be that she's in some kind of trouble? I just saw Wenbei's diary in your study. I sped up my words to put an end to Shinyensi's inner drama in advance. Sure enough, I saw a flash of shock on his face. I pursed my lips, and in Shinyensi's gradually darkening gaze, I slowly voiced out the question in my heart. Shinyensi, since you said you've never liked Wenbei, why do you still keep her diary? The living room became extremely quiet. I slowed down my breathing and focused all my attention on Shinyensi's inner thoughts. Did Nan see that diary? Should I tell her now, or find an excuse to get through this? When I heard the word excuse, I squinted my eyes slightly. However, Shinyensi quickly thought again. Telling her about this might put her in danger, but I don't want to lie to her either. Shinyensi lowered his head slightly, his hair blocked part of his sight, and I couldn't see his expression clearly. However, listening to his inner words, I confirmed my speculation. There was something wrong with Wenbei's death. I pursed my lips, and in an instant, I felt the emotions in my heart surging as if they were about to explode. Shinyensi was still silent. I forcefully suppressed the sour feeling in my heart and said with a slight tremor in my voice, Shinyensi, I don't have any other family members besides you. Please don't lie to me, okay? Shinyensi suddenly raised his head and looked at me as if he couldn't believe what I said. I myself couldn't tell how much sincerity and how much use there was in these words, but I could hear the passionate and surging feelings in Shinyensi's heart. This made me not even dare to look into his eyes too much. After a while, Shinyensi stood up and said, Come to the study with me. In the study. Shinyensi took out Wenbei's diary and handed it to me. The password is 1121, you'll understand after reading the content. I followed Shinyensi's words and opened the diary. My hands were shaking when I entered the password. Wenbei's diary was indeed a record of her love affairs. She fell in love with someone in university and then started dating him. However, the name of this person never appeared. I flipped through the pages one by one. The earlier part was just some ordinary feelings about being in love. However, when I read further, I couldn't help but frown. He seems a bit strange recently. Is he facing some trouble? I asked him, and he said he was in a bad mood and asked me to go on a trip with him to relax. This is our first trip together, and I'm so looking forward to it, except for these 2 records with a long interval. There was only a photo of a man's back on the following pages. I looked at the back of the man in the photo and felt a bit familiar, but I couldn't remember who he was for a moment. Other than that, there was nothing else recorded in this diary. I looked at Shinyensi in a daze. Shinyensi pursed his lips, as if organizing his words. A few months before Wenbei's accident, she attended my birthday party. We hadn't been in touch for a long time before that, but that time. She suddenly started reminiscing with me about a research trip we had in junior high school in City Z. Shinyensi walked next to me and took the diary from my hand. She was called away after saying just a few words and left early soon after. I didn't realize that something was strange about her until after her accident. I'm sorry, if I had noticed it earlier, I might have been able to help her. Shinyensi looked at me with a guilty expression. I shook my head and said softly, "It's not your fault, so you went to City Z." Yeah, she mentioned twice that the hotel she stayed in at that time was very comfortable, so I took a business trip there. I got the diary at the front desk, and the password was also told to me by the front desk staff. Shinyensi looked at the page where Wenbei pasted the photo, and after a moment of contemplation, he said, "I heard from the front desk that she came with a man that day and stayed for about a week." The diary was found in the corner of the bathroom. When they found the diary, there was an inner page attached to it, written with my name and 4 digits using an eyebrow pencil, and it also said not to make a fuss and wait for me to come and pick it up. You know, those hotels always take the requests of guests like us very seriously, so they kept that diary until I went to inquire and then gave it to me. The more I listened, the tighter my frown became. Wenbei's behavior was really strange. I looked at the man in the photo and pointed at him. "Do you know him?" "Yes, I do. His name is Chu Mulin." I was stunned for a moment, and then I suddenly understood. No wonder he looked familiar to me. This person was quite a famous figure in our circle. He was originally an illegitimate son of the Chu family. Later, he was recognized back into the family, but a few years ago, he suddenly announced that he was breaking away from the Chu family. After that, he started his own business and had been on the rise ever since. Now, he has reached a level where he can completely compete with the Chu family. People privately joke that he is the male protagonist of a contemporary cool story novel. I didn't expect that Wenbei's boyfriend was actually him. Shinyensi tore off the photo of the man from the notebook and held it at an angle towards the light. He pointed it out to me, and then I noticed that there were several scratches on the photo. Shinyensi explained, "This is actually a code we set when we participated in a competition at school. These scratches are abbreviations of 2 English words, memory card and password." Memory card and password. "What do you mean?" I asked in confusion. Shinyensi didn't give a clear answer, but just shook his head. He pasted the photo back and suddenly looked at me very seriously. "Nan, I know you're Wenbei's family member, and you care a lot about her affairs. But I haven't found out more about this matter yet, and I can't be sure if there is some kind of danger involved." He paused for a moment and then added softly, "Or maybe I'm just overthinking it." Hearing this, I lowered my eyes and tugged at the corner of my mouth with a bit of sourness. Shinyensi wasn't overthinking it. Wenbei's behavior was indeed very abnormal, and this matter was indeed dangerous. In my previous life, the two of us had already verified this with our lives once. They all wanted to protect me, so they tried their best to keep me from getting involved in this matter, but the fact proved that being kept in the dark couldn't ensure absolute safety. Only by eliminating the danger from the source and taking the initiative into our own hands could we achieve true victory. I roughly integrated all the things I knew from these 2 lifetimes in my heart, then I raised my head and smiled at Shinyensi. "Wenbei must have had no other choice when she came to you at that time. I'm sorry that she dragged you into this dangerous matter even though it had nothing to do with you." Shinyensi shook his head. He seemed to have also realized that I wouldn't believe his excuse of overthinking, so he didn't open his mouth to refute, but I clearly heard him thinking in his heart, "In fact, I should thank Wenbei for choosing to tell me about this matter. If Wenbei really offended some dangerous person, it's hard to say that Nan wouldn't be implicated. At least now I still have the opportunity to take the initiative and protect Nan." I felt my heart skip a beat uncontrollably. A feeling of being touched and slightly sour instantly filled my entire chest. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and looked at Shinyensi, and said firmly, "Shinyensi, I don't want to do anything that I'll regret anymore, even if there is danger. I want to know all the truth." I paused for a moment, and then smiled at him. "Besides, I have you, right?" Hearing my words, Shinyensi was unexpectedly not as excited as I had imagined. He didn't say or think anything. He just looked at me quietly for a few seconds and finally nodded solemnly. After putting away the diary, he urged me to go back and rest, and then he was about to walk out past me. the moment we passed each other, I instinctively grabbed his arm. Shin Yancy was taken aback and asked in a low voice, "Is there anything else, tonight?" I pursed my lips, my fingers gripping his arm tightened slightly, and I gritted my teeth and said, "Can you sleep with me tonight? I don't want to be alone." Crash, the ornament on Shin Yancy's desk, which was worth 800,000 yuan, was shattered into pieces. His previously calm inner world was instantly filled with all kinds of incoherent screams. I watched him scurrying around to clean up with amusement. My originally somewhat whiny mood miraculously calmed down. In the evening, for the first time since we got married, Shin Yancy and I lay on the same bed, but he only occupied a corner of the bed, to the extent that he would fall off the bed if he turned over. Considering that I had already given him enough shocks today, so I decided to let him off for now. I turned my back to Shin Yancy and tried to fall asleep. However, I kept hearing the sound of his inner muttering from behind. "Am I going to die? Otherwise, why is Nan Nan being so nice to me today? Could there be something wrong with the last medical examination report? My God, this can't be hospice care, can it? No, I have to find a lawyer to consult tomorrow and see how I can leave more things for Nan Nan after I die." At first, I thought about ignoring Shin Yancy's inner thoughts and leaving him alone. However, he just wouldn't stop, and what he said were all things I didn't want to hear. I endured it again and again until I couldn't stand it anymore. I simply turned over, raised my hands and feet, and slapped them onto Shin Yancy's body. The world instantly became quiet. I hooked the corner of my mouth in satisfaction and snuggled closer into Shin Yancy's arms, holding his body that was as stiff as a zombie. I finally gradually felt sleepy and fell asleep. When I woke up the next day, Shin Yancy had already gone to the company. Since I had nothing to do at home, I simply immersed myself in the study to study Wenbei's diary. Wenbei finally chose to give the diary to Shin Yancy. It was very likely that the degree of danger of this matter could only be countered by someone with Shin Yancy's status, but based on my understanding of Wenbei, she wasn't the kind of person who would forcefully impose danger on others. That meant that this matter might be more serious than we thought. I spent a whole day studying Wenbei's diary, but there were really too few useful clues in the diary. After looking at it over and over again, I still thought that this matter should start with Chu Mulin. I originally planned to discuss it with Shin Yancy in the evening, but when he came back from work, he suddenly took the initiative to say to me, "If you don't have any arrangements recently, would you like to come and work in my company?" He paused for a moment and then added, "I have a cooperation project with Chu Mulin recently, and I think you might want to participate." I immediately perked up. I thought it was just what I needed at the right time, and without hesitation, I said, "No problem, I'll start working tomorrow. There's no rush, wait until I finish the handover here, you can come next Monday." Shin Yancy said it seriously. I didn't suspect anything. I was just about to tell him some things I thought of when studying Wenbei's diary today, but then I heard him let out a long sigh of relief in his heart and say, "Great, now I can finally be with my wife all day long." Anyway, Nan Nan already knows what she should know. I don't want to live the kind of life where I can't see my wife for at least 8 hours a day. Come to think of it, it shouldn't be a problem to make contact with Chu Mulin within a week. Right, forget it. I'll ask Xiao Zhang to find his phone number for me later. If it doesn't work, I'll just tell Nan Nan that there's something wrong with the project and think of other ways. During this week, I just watched coldly as Shin Yancy kept answering calls and working overtime at home. When it was time for me to go to the company and start working as we had agreed, he really managed to establish contact with Chu Mulin. The two of us looked at the project plan in his office and both felt that things were going a bit too smoothly. I'm afraid that Chu Mulin has already sensed something. Not only do we want to find him, but he might also want to find us. Sure enough, the subsequent project promotion was very efficient. As Shin Yancy's secretary, I accompanied him to several meetings and finally met Chu Mulin in person. He looked gentle and refined in person. He would put on a smile when talking to anyone, making people feel very friendly, but maybe because of my preconceived notions, I always felt that his smile was very false. Moreover, I always felt that he was sizing me up intentionally or unintentionally. I pretended not to notice and focused on my work throughout. It wasn't until the meeting ended and Chu Mulin shook hands with Shin Yancy to say goodbye, I then pretended to look at him casually and happened to meet his gaze. Chu Mulin seemed to be surprised that I would suddenly look at him and was clearly taken aback, but in an instant, he composed himself completely, smiled politely at me, and then left on the pretext of work. there was no sign of anything abnormal at all. I frowned slightly as I looked at his back. My intuition told me that he wanted to say something to me. It was just that he didn't take action because the occasion wasn't right. But what was there about me that was worthy of his attention? After all, I didn't even know that he had been in a relationship with Wenbei. There was no reason for him to approach me. Or was it because of Shin Yanxi? Even though I had lived 2 lifetimes, the clues I had were still too few. My mind was a bit confused, especially when I thought about the ending between Shin Yanxi and me in my previous life. Just thinking about the way he was covered in blood at the end, lying there with his body cold, made me feel extremely irritable. Subconsciously, I reached out and held Shin Yanxi's hand beside me. The temperature of his palm was very high, and the heat gradually passed to my hand through the place where our skin touched. Feeling this real warmth, I finally felt my heartbeat gradually calm down, and I finally noticed Shin Yanxi's noisy inner thoughts beside me again. Why did Nan Nan stare at that Chu Mulan for so long? The guy has been gone for ages, and she's still looking. Even if she suspects him, she shouldn't be so fascinated, right? Could it be that Nan Nan likes the type of Chu Mulan? What's so good about him except that he can smile a bit more than me? Maybe I should find a doctor and see if I can get a smile lip done. I'm here racking my brains and exhausting myself over the enemy in the dark. This love-struck guy is actually thinking about a smile lip. I was so angry that I laughed. I let go of his hand and pinched his arm hard. Shin Yanxi didn't cry out in pain, but just looked at me blankly. What's wrong? Nothing. I just suddenly feel a bit worried about my future. I looked at him, squinted my eyes, and smiled falsely. Shin Yanxi, if I die, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. After going back that day, Shin Yanxi was well behaved for a while. Mainly, he kept thinking about why I suddenly got angry, and at least he didn't have the time to think about a smile lip anymore. However, through this incident, I suddenly began to realize. I can hear Shin Yanxi's inner thoughts now and know what he's thinking, but Shin Yanxi doesn't know what I'm thinking. The kidnapping, the rebirth, Wenbei's diary. I've been focusing all my energy on these things during this period, so much so that I've gotten used to directly listening to Shin Yanxi's inner thoughts to understand him, completely ignoring the need to take the initiative to deal with this relationship with Shin Yanxi. Shin Yanxi is clearly full of unease about our relationship now. But then again, as far as I can remember, I don't seem to have done anything excessive to Shin Yanxi, right? Why does it seem like he takes it for granted that I'll hate him? I secretly sized up Shin Yanxi, who had entered his working state. I have to admit that when there are no messy inner thoughts ruining the atmosphere, Shin Yanxi is indeed a very charming man. Coupled with the fact that I now clearly know all the things he has done for me over such a long time, it seems like a very natural thing to fall in love with him. I never considered this direction before because of various reasons. Now that I've thought of it, I won't run away from my feelings. The ability to read minds came out of nowhere, and I don't know when it will disappear. I want to live on with Shin Yanxi and spend a lifetime together. Some things have to be said by us ourselves. After figuring this out, I plan to find a suitable opportunity to have an open talk with Shin Yanxi. However, in the next month or so, we worked overtime until we were completely exhausted. We not only had to catch up on the progress of the project with Chu Mulan, Shin Yanxi was also using his connections to investigate what had happened before Wenbei's accident. I was so busy that I almost went to buy some quick-acting heart-relieving pills and keep them in the office. As for having a romantic talk or confessing to Shin Yanxi, I didn't have the slightest bit of energy to spare. We kept being busy like this until the weather turned completely cold. Shin Yanxi suddenly brought back 2 invitation letters. I took them and took a look, and instantly perked up. An invitation letter to Chu Mulan's birthday party. November 21st is actually his birthday. No wonder. Thinking of the password to open Wenbei's diary, my hand holding the invitation letter trembled a bit. Wenbei mentioned the password. Since it's Chu Mulan's birthday, this matter must be related to him. I felt that Chu Mulan had something to say to me during the meeting that day. I'll see if I can talk to him on his birthday. I looked at Shin Yanxi and smiled slightly under his obscure gaze, with a bit of a soothing meaning. I took the initiative to place my hand on the back of his hand and said softly, "Don't worry, I won't be out of your sight." As soon as I finished speaking, I indeed heard the sound of Shin Yanxi heaving a sigh of relief in his heart. Then he thought again. Nan Nan doesn't seem to hate me that much recently. Is it because I'm helping her investigate Wenbei's matter? Forget it, it doesn't matter. As long as she's happy, that's enough. I was stunned when I heard this, and my heart couldn't help but be moved. However, Before I could savor it properly, Shinyensi's inner thoughts took a turn and he said, "It's not easy for Nan Nan to start accepting me now. I must break the rumor of the substitute, find 2 people to act out a scene. Let them come in front of us and mention the matter of the substitute loudly. In this way, I can clarify it logically and also take the opportunity to warn others not to spread rumors randomly. Okay, that's it. Let Xiaozhang contact them in the evening and hire 2 people with good acting skills. Don't let it slip." Me. When it came to Chu Mulan's birthday, I somehow found an excuse to dispel Shinyensi's embarrassing idea. However, although it was an excuse, I did have some other thoughts about the matter of the substitute. On the first day of my rebirth, I heard Shinyensi say in his heart that he had made a clarification, including in my previous life. Shinyensi had denied it to me more than once, but I only misunderstood because I saw the substantial thing like Wenbei's diary. Why did other people firmly believe it, at least, considering the situations in both lifetimes? I think there must be someone fueling the flames behind this. And spreading such a rumor must also have some other purpose. Perhaps it's to drive a wedge between Shinyensi and me. Shinyensi and I discussed and agreed that we would pretend to be on bad terms and act separately when we arrived at the scene. After half of the banquet was over, Chu Mulan finally couldn't hold back and walked towards me. I pretended to know nothing and exchanged a few pleasantries with him. Sure enough, he took the initiative to mention his relationship with Wenbei. I feigned shock. He didn't say more, just pursed his lips extremely restrainedly. I saw his eyes gradually turn a bit red. That kind of restrained and genuine sadness made me almost dispel my suspicion of him in an instant. Before I could react, he had already composed himself and smiled at me. "Let's exchange contact information. If you have any trouble, you can come to me, and I'll help you. I think Wenbei would also want you to be happy, whether in life or in love." After he finished speaking, he seemed to casually glance in the direction of Shinyensi. I followed his gaze. Shinyensi happened to glance in our direction and then indifferently looked away. It was as if he really didn't care about me at all. I withdrew my gaze, didn't say more, and just exchanged a knowing and bitter smile with Chu Mulan. I added his contact information. It wasn't until the end of the banquet that I met up with Shinyensi again. After we met, I noticed that his state was a bit strange. He was absent-minded when I talked to him on the way home. I simply fell silent too. It wasn't until we were near home that I heard him say almost indifferently in his heart, "I'm still too useless." I remained silent, got out of the car first, and left without waiting for him. I washed up, tidied up, and went back to the bedroom. It wasn't until he came to the bedside that I suddenly reached out when he wasn't paying attention and pushed him down on the bed. Shinyensi leaned against the headboard and looked at me in surprise. I pressed his shoulders with both hands and looked at him seriously face to face. Shinyensi finally had some flustered voices in his heart. I listened quietly, and after a while, I slowly said, "Shinyensi, for our plan today, did you not want to do it?" Shinyensi seemed not to have expected me to ask this and didn't respond for a moment. I waited patiently, and it was only after a few seconds that he lowered his eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't worry, I won't ruin the plan." I was so angry that I laughed at him. "Shinyensi, did I accuse you? I was just asking if you didn't want to do it." His expression became even more confused. I heard him say in his heart in an extremely matter-of-fact tone, "It doesn't matter whether I want to or not. After all, Nan Nan wants to do this." It seemed that he really hadn't considered himself at all. Whether he was happy or willing didn't matter. As long as this plan was something I wanted to complete, he would definitely do his best to help me. I knew his thoughts very well. I was touched and also very happy. But this wasn't okay. If Shinyensi kept suppressing himself and ignoring his emotions like this, his state would definitely have problems after a long time. I took a deep breath gently. I felt that besides these emotions in my heart, there was also a faint, uncontrollable restlessness. I looked directly into his eyes and intensified the tone. "Shinyensi, I'm asking you again, didn't you want to do it?" He opened his mouth slightly, avoiding my gaze. "It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter my ass." I really felt like I was hitting a piece of cotton with a punch. I was so angry that I didn't know what to say. I let go of his shoulders, stretched out my finger, and pointed at the position of his heart. I was both angry and amused as I said, "Shinyensi, it was you who helped me pay off the huge debt after my family's accident, and it was also you who somehow wanted to marry me. I know all the big and small things you've done for me in the past 2 years. I'm not a fool. All your actions clearly show that you like me. Why is it so difficult for you to say this from your mouth? Shinyensi slowly widened his eyes and looked at me in disbelief. I had thought for so long about the right opportunity and the right words, but I didn't expect that in a fit of excitement, I just blurted out these words. Many things become easier once they have a beginning. Regardless of Shinyensi's expression, I continued to point at his heart and said, Shinyensi, if you want me to accept you, you have to let me know what you're thinking. I don't have the ability to read minds. How can I understand if you don't say anything? Or is it that I've been flattering myself from the beginning to the end? Do you actually plan to become a monk after you turn 30? And being nice to me now is just about doing good deeds and accumulating virtue? I don't. No, it's you don't. He instinctively denied me anxiously. However, he stopped halfway through his words. I didn't let him go and continued to ask, I don't have what? You don't. His expression gradually showed a painful entanglement. I felt his chest heaving more and more. After a long time, he said word by word with difficulty, you're not flattering yourself. After saying this, he seemed to deflate like a punctured balloon, and his body instantly slumped down. I saw him avoid my gaze. I heard a voice in his heart that was almost desolate and said flatly, Nan has seen it. She'll probably hate me even more, right? Hate? Why? I was so surprised by Shinyensi's inner thoughts that I accidentally blurted out the words, but Shinyensi didn't seem to hear me. I simply patted him and directly asked my question. By the way, Shinyensi, you seem to have always thought that I hate you. Why do you think so? He came back to his senses and frowned slightly. Didn't you hate me before? Since your sophomore year of high school, you suddenly cut off all private contact with me. You didn't pay much attention to me when we met usually, and your attitude towards me became very cold. You should have hated me, right? Moreover, after the accident in your family this time, I took advantage of the situation and forced you to marry me. Wait a moment, you mean high school? I never expected that the source of this matter could be traced back so long ago. I thought about it carefully and explained absurdly. Back in my sophomore year of high school, I thought you were going to get married in an arranged marriage with Wenbei. How could I still maintain private contact with my sister's fiancé? When did I say I was going to have an arranged marriage with Wenbei? Shinyensi suddenly sat up straight from the headboard and looked at me in disbelief. I spread my hands helplessly and said, I heard my parents chatting about it. Maybe the adults had that intention, I'm not really sure. Shinyensi pursed his lips, seemingly unable to accept it for a moment. I heard that his inner thoughts had completely turned into a series of interjections due to excessive shock. I found it funny and simply poked his shoulder and snorted, see, if you had directly told me that you liked me at that time, there wouldn't have been so many problems. I didn't like you at that time. When I heard that you were going to marry my sister, I definitely had to keep my distance from you. Finally, a trace of regret appeared on Shinyensi's face. I pressed on with my advantage and said, I'm telling you, don't think that now that we're married and have the marriage certificate, everything is fine. Trust and honesty are the foundation of marriage. If you still don't say anything in the future and make me guess, then if I guess wrong, misunderstand you, and don't like you anymore, it will be your own fault. Do you understand? Shinyensi's expression tightened, and he suddenly looked at me, his eyes faintly shining with anticipation. Not like me in the future, so you now. I nodded with a smile. Shinyensi's breath suddenly caught in his throat. The first thing he felt wasn't even joy but confusion. I could hear Shinyensi's inner thoughts. I knew that although he was love-struck every day in his heart, but in fact, he had never dared to think even once that I would like him too. In the balance of our relationship, he had placed himself in a lower position from the very beginning. He could give everything for me, even his life, and I didn't need to repay him for anything. I looked at the surprised and at a loss expression on his face, which was like that of a child who had received candy for the first time. I suddenly didn't want to ask the remaining questions. My heart seemed to be gently gripped by a hand, aching with a sour and bitter feeling. Those hidden affections, those bloody acts of protection. Scene after scene played out before my eyes, gradually blurring my vision. Suddenly, I propped myself up and, before Shinyensi could react, turned and sat on his lap. Words were no longer enough to convey my emotions at this moment. I kept Shinyensi's face and looked at him tenderly yet firmly. Shinyensi, I love you. Right now, I urgently need you to fulfill your duties as a husband. You'd better accept reality quickly, or I might change my mind. As soon as I finished speaking, I felt a force of weightlessness, and Shinyensi and I switched positions. Outside the window, The dark clouds covering the moon slowly drifted away with the wind blowing from afar. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but at least, at this moment, the moonlight bathed everything, bright and clear. After that day, Shinyensi's demeanor clearly changed. Specifically, he became even more clingy, and probably because we had cleared up some misunderstandings, he was no longer as reserved as before. Although he still didn't talk much, I knew these things took time. After all, I could still hear his inner thoughts, so I wasn't worried about any misunderstandings. Moreover, recently, Chu Mulin had been contacting me much more frequently. Most of our energy was still focused on this matter. When Chu Mulin reached out to me, he didn't ask me out. Instead, we chatted online. Most of our conversations were about Wenbei. From our chats, I learned that he and Wenbei got together during their sophomore year of college. At first, he didn't let Wenbei go public with their relationship. It was because he felt that his status as an illegitimate child wasn't good enough for Wenbei. Later, after he left the Chu family and succeeded in starting his own business, he proposed to Wenbei, but he never expected that Wenbei would be in a car accident. I was skeptical of his words but still pretended to be sad to cooperate with him. I also noticed that although his hints were subtle when chatting with me, he was indeed insinuating that Shinyensi had always liked Wenbei. He said that Shinyensi used to always hover around Wenbei and did many affectionate things for her. When Shinyensi saw this chat record, he mentally cursed Chu Mulin's ancestors. Slander, it's all slander. I didn't have frequent private contacts with Wenbei at all. I soothed him amusedly while continuing to play along with Chu Mulin. I maintained contact with Chu Mulin online while also pretending to have a strained relationship with Shinyensi in public. Shinyensi acted as if he didn't care about me, and I acted as if I didn't trust him. In this way, we moved in with Chu Mulin for several months. It wasn't until the following spring that Chu Mulin finally started tentatively mentioning some requests to me. By then, all our conversations had tacitly accepted the premise that Shinyensi liked Wenbei. Chu Mulin seemingly accidentally brought up in the flow of conversation. He said that he and Wenbei had a commemorative USB drive, which contained some videos that weren't suitable for others to see. That USB drive should have been left at Wenbei's home, but the house had been bought by Shinyensi. He said that since Shinyensi knew about his relationship with Wenbei, Shinyensi would never agree to give him Wenbei's things, so he asked if I could help get that USB drive for him. My heart trembled when I read these words. I knew we were finally getting close to the deepest hidden secret. To be honest, we hadn't stopped investigating in these past few months. But apart from confirming that Chu Mulin was the one spreading the substitute rumor, everything else seemed to have hit a dead end. I couldn't help but feel excited when I saw Chu Mulin's request. But the USB drive he mentioned also made me very curious. I told Shinyensi about it. He looked solemn and pondered. I'm sure the clue Wenbei left was a memory card, not a USB drive. Strangely enough, Shinyensi's words made me even more suspicious of the USB drive. After thinking it over, I didn't agree to Chu Mulin's request. I also vaguely implied that I didn't have the right to make demands on Shinyensi and might not be able to enter my former home again. Chu Mulin didn't force me, he just said he would find another way. But a few days later, Shinyensi and I had a big fight at the company because of the substitute rumor. Coincidentally, it was heard by passing colleagues and spread. That night, I took the initiative to contact Chu Mulin and asked him for more details about the USB drive. Chu Mulin called me directly and said, "It's an ordinary white USB drive, but the 4 numbers 1121 are engraved on it." My heart skipped a beat, and I blurted out, "Your birthday, yeah." His voice was still gentle and refined. "But it's also the day we first met. I saw her in the school auditorium and fell in love at first sight. I'll never forget that day. Actually, we went back there once before Wenbei's accident. It was our 6th anniversary. We recorded some things and saved them on this USB drive. This USB drive really holds many memories for me. It means a lot to me. Nan, I can only count on you for this. Please help me." Not until the call ended did I feel like my heart was about to jump out of my throat. I suddenly had a bold guess. When Shinyensi came back, I pulled him into the study and took out Wenbei's diary. Pointing at the 2 clues Wenbei left, I told Shinyensi about my phone call with Chu Mulin. Shinyensi immediately understood and said, "You think Wenbei hid the memory card in our university auditorium?" "It's possible." I didn't want to be too certain. After a moment of thought, Shinyensi said he would send someone to look for it. I nodded and brought up another concern. "This USB drive, I have a feeling it's real. Should I go back home? I looked at Shinyensi, seeking his advice, but Shinyensi looked at me seriously. I heard him think, Nan will be sad if she goes back to the Wen family now. But what should I do? I can't stop her from going home forever. I didn't expect that would be Shinyensi's first reaction. To be honest, I hadn't even thought about it. My heart felt like it had been submerged in a huge swimming pool filled with marshmallows. It turned sweet and soft in an instant. I opened my arms, and Shinyensi naturally pulled me into his embrace, leaning against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. I said, "Come with me. I have a hunch that we won't lose this time, so whether it's a disguise or the truth, let's witness it together." A few days later, Shinyensi and I went back to the Wen family's old villa. It was the first time I'd been back since the Wen family's accident. Before, I was afraid of being reminded of the past. Now, with Shinyensi by my side, it didn't seem so sad. The house remained exactly as it was before my parents' accident. Shinyensi and I searched for the USB drive separately. Surprisingly, we found it in my parents' room. The USB drive was locked in a small safe by my parents. I was shocked when I found it, because the password I used to open the safe was the one my parents usually used. This meant my parents had hidden it there. But why did my parents have the USB drive that Chu Mulin was looking for? Could it be that what Wenbei was investigating was also related to my parents? My mind went completely blank. I instinctively looked at Shinyensi, only to find him unexpectedly calm, without a trace of surprise. It was as if he had known all along. I calmed down and tried to listen to his inner thoughts, but his mind was unusually quiet. Shinyensi frowned slightly, his eyes fixed on the USB drive, as if contemplating something. I called his name, and he seemed to gradually come back to his senses. Shinyensi turned to look at me but didn't come close as he usually did. Unexpectedly, he said, Nan, I just found out something recently. I think I know what business Chu Mulin is really doing." My heart trembled, and I whispered, "What is it?" "Human trafficking." Shinyensi emphasized each word. My eyes widened in shock. "Human trafficking? Are you sure?" Shinyensi nodded. "I'm afraid that's what Wenbei was trying to expose, and maybe your parents knew about it too." I understood every word Shinyensi said, but when they came together as a sentence, I couldn't make sense of it. Shinyensi's voice turned cold. "Chu Mulin is involved in human trafficking in Southeast Asia. I used some connections to investigate. Although I haven't got conclusive evidence yet, I'm pretty sure." I stared at the USB drive in front of me, forcing myself to calm down and think about what Shinyensi said. Shinyensi continued, "About 2 years ago, one of Chu Mulin's shipping routes along the southeast coast was reported. At the same time, his entire funding chain along the southeast coast was completely cut off. He managed to cover his tracks, but he suffered heavy losses and was almost caught." Shinyensi looked up at me, his gaze unreadable. I covered my mouth with my hand, feeling my breathing grow heavy. Shinyensi said word by word, "It was your parents who did it." When my suspicion was confirmed, I couldn't catch my breath and started coughing violently. Shinyensi rushed over immediately to pat my back and help me catch my breath. I waved my hand. I coughed so hard that my stomach started churning, and I barely managed to stop. When I opened my mouth, my voice was hoarse beyond recognition. I cleared my throat and then said with difficulty and confusion, "My parents, yeah, I don't know the details, but I'm certain it was your parents who did it back then." Shinyensi handed me a glass of water. He had always hired people to maintain this house. Looking at the familiar and tidy room, I felt as if my parents had just gone out and would come back laughing and chatting any moment. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something but not knowing where to start. I even began to wonder if this so-called rebirth was just a hallucination before my death. I felt as if my soul had left my body and floated into the air. I was lost, not knowing which way to go. When Nan, "Listen to me. I have to send her away. Chu Mulin will never let her go." Two voices rang in my ears simultaneously, like a bomb. It jolted my wandering soul back into my body. I reacted a beat too late. In that short moment, I heard Shinyensi say gently but firmly, "I bought you a plane ticket to Country R tonight. I've arranged for someone to pick you up there. I will definitely get to the bottom of this. I'll find out what really happened to Wenbei and your parents. I won't let Chu Mulin go. You've helped me investigate him enough." The more I listened, the more I wanted to shut him up. Shinyensi must have planned all this in advance, which was why he had been standing a few steps away from me. Before I could actually cover his mouth, I shouted sharply, "Shinyensi, shut up." Shinyensi ignored me. He even smiled at me. His handsome face full of undisguised love. Nan Nan, be good. After what your family did, Chumulin will never spare you. Go to Countryar tonight, there's an old friend of my grandfather there, and no one will dare to touch you. Just wait for me, I'll take care of everything you're worried about, and then I'll come and get you. Looking at Shinyansi's determined expression, I knew there was no changing his mind. Even if I refused, he would probably force me to leave the country. Suddenly, I understood why Shinyansi distanced himself from me and later wanted a divorce during the last year of our previous life. He must have found out about all this back then. In our previous life, I hadn't had direct contact with Chumulin, and my relationship with Shinyansi was cold and strained, so Shinyansi didn't insist on sending me abroad. Our relationship was different in this life, but it seemed Shinyansi hadn't changed at all. He still wanted me to live while he was willing to risk his life. I knew very well. I went over every detail of my relationship with Shinyansi from our previous life to this life in my mind. Instead of responding to what Shinyansi said, after a long pause, I suddenly asked, Shinyansi, I've heard many people say that the Shin family's rise wasn't through ordinary means. They say that all of you in the Shin family are cold-blooded, ruthless, and willing to do anything to achieve your goals. With no genuine feelings for anyone. I've never asked you before, why do you like me so much? After I finished speaking, I casually pulled a chair and sat down. Although Shinyansi and I had confessed our feelings to each other, it seemed I had overlooked something. Now that we knew we loved each other and had cleared up the misunderstandings, there was no reason for Shinyansi to still see himself as the inferior one in our relationship. There must be something I didn't know. I was prepared for a long, drawn-out discussion with Shinyansi. However, to my surprise, after a moment of silence, Shinyansi said, I'm not good at expressing things like this. I know. Take your time, I replied softly but firmly. Shinyansi had been better at expressing his emotions in front of me recently. Although I didn't know why something as simple as expressing feelings was so difficult for him, I wasn't in a hurry. I was willing to wait, but since he was pushing me now, I had to be more assertive. He gave me a slightly helpless look. I heard him sigh in his mind. Then, he finally began to speak slowly and clumsily. My family is indeed quite different from ordinary ones, since I can remember. The most common thing I heard was that emotions are the most useless things, and only money, power, and status matter. Therefore, the education I've received has always been about how to become cold-blooded and ruthless and climb to a higher position. He paused and let out a sigh. Strangely, I felt that he seemed a bit more relaxed. Maybe he'd decided to just let it all go, I thought to myself, but still waited patiently for him to continue. All the children in my family have to take a special class at a very young age, which is about how to get rid of useless emotions, such as feelings of compassion, sympathy, and other forms of tenderness. This class doesn't teach anything else. They just prepare a puppy and a knife, and what I'm supposed to do is kill the puppy with the knife. What the hell? That's crazy. I couldn't hold back and blurted out. Shinyansi smiled, and I almost wanted to stop him from talking, but if I stopped him now, I didn't know if I'd ever get another chance to hear him say these things. So I endured and waited for him to gradually reveal the real him to me. Shinyansi continued, I was just a child then, and of course, I couldn't bring myself to do it. They locked me up. Without food or water, I wouldn't be able to get out unless I killed the puppy. Shinyansi spoke calmly, but all I wanted was to go back in time and get rid of those who had forced him. Did you do it in the end? I asked softly, my voice trembling slightly. Shinyansi let out a bitter laugh and shook his head, full of self-mockery. Yes, I did. I cut myself a few times, got some blood on me, and then threw the dog out through the only vent. When the person watching me came to check on me and saw that I was covered in blood, they opened the door. I told them the dog had tried to attack me, and I'd killed it and thrown it out. I knew that if they couldn't find the puppy's body and the blood on me didn't contain animal blood, they'd easily figure out I was lying. But at my age and with my abilities back then, that was the best I could do. I gritted my teeth and endured for a while, then suddenly stood up. I walked over and hugged him, wanting to offer some comfort. He stiffened for a moment, then gently stroked my head before continuing. After saying that, I fainted because I was too weak, but when I woke up again, I heard that they'd detected animal blood in the blood on me and also found the puppy's body. I barely passed that test. It was only later that I learned an aunt who was close to my mother had helped me. The aunt told me that she'd been closely watching and trying to find a way to help me during those days I was locked up, and she'd heard what I said as soon as I said it. Coincidentally, my second younger brother was also taking that class at the time, and we used puppies from the same litter, which looked very similar. I was probably the only one in my family who resisted that task extremely. Anyway, my second younger brother completed it smoothly. The aunt was in charge of disposing of the used props, so she used that puppy's body to help me get away with it. Shinyensi gave a self-deprecating smile. Even though I managed to get through it, I don't think the puppy could have survived. It was very young, hadn't eaten or drunk anything for days, and was already very weak. The vent I threw it out of was very high. Even if it didn't die from the fall, it wouldn't have had the strength to go out and seek help. Besides, that high-end residential area was remote, so it was almost certain to die. So, no matter how you look at it, I'm actually the murderer, and I can't escape that. I always told myself that. However, I never expected that a few years later, when I went back with Wenbei to get exam materials, I unexpectedly saw it again. My heart skipped a beat, and I stared at him in shock. Shinyensi's voice became hoarse and even trembled slightly. Those people in the Shin family wouldn't notice, but I'd been with that puppy for several days, and I knew there was a small flaw on its nose. I couldn't be mistaken, so I was almost stunned, unable to believe it. When Bei told me that her younger sister had found the puppy outside a few years ago, the puppy had been on the verge of death at that time, looking like it was about to die. But her younger sister didn't want to give up and took it to the hospital, and surprisingly, it was saved. Then their family adopted the puppy. I suddenly pushed Shinyensi away, my mouth wide open in disbelief. You mean Chocho? I did save a dying puppy in the neighborhood when I was a child. The puppy had a broken hind leg and always limped even after it was cured. I never thought it was. Shinyensi curved his lips, looking at me deeply, and nodded solemnly. His eyes were slightly red, and his voice was full of restraint. He said, Nan, you probably can't imagine how I felt at that moment. In a place like the Shin family, emotions are worthless. There's no family affection, no trust, you can't be weak, and you can't show any vulnerability, or you'll die. Most of my older brothers and sisters died in infighting for power and profit. Even though I didn't want to accept that way of life, after all these years, I was almost ready to give in. But at that moment, you made me realize that my resistance had been meaningful. Nan, do you know, at that moment, I felt like I was saved. He smiled happily, but I couldn't hold back anymore. With tears streaming down my face, I kissed him. I finally understood why he had been suppressing his feelings, why simple expressions were so difficult for him, and I also finally understood why he had gone to such lengths, even though he knew that investigating Chu Mulan's affairs would be extremely dangerous. He still didn't hesitate. It wasn't just for me. Perhaps in his heart, there had always been that pure kindness and respect for life that the child within him had originally possessed. I pushed him away, crying so hard that I could barely breathe. He gently kissed the tears off my face and whispered in my ear tenderly, Nan, the reason I'm standing here today is that you saved me, but I also know very well that my feelings for you are no longer just gratitude, no matter from which perspective. I should help you and have every reason to protect your safety. He pressed his forehead against mine and said softly, Nan, I don't want to feel powerless again. I leaned against Shinyensi, and it took a long time for my emotions to calm down. In Shinyensi's mind, he probably still felt that he owed me a debt of gratitude, even though saving that puppy was just a random act on my part. But he had taken it upon himself to repay that debt. Gratitude and love, these are the two most complex and heavy emotions in the world. Shinyensi carried both of them, which was why he had always placed me on a pedestal in his heart. I finally understood it all. But why should I accept his self-imposed offering? We're just a couple who love each other. I composed myself, pushed him away, and stared at him seriously. Shinyensi, tell me, what do you plan to do after you send me away? Shinyensi thought to himself, after I take over the Shin family, I can restore those severed relationships. I will definitely make Chu Mulan pay the price. But what he said aloud was, I'll just do some business with him. As long as he leaves you alone in the future, that'll be fine. Hearing these two completely different statements, I sneered. Shinyensi, do you think I'm stupid? Let me ask you, isn't what Chu Mulan is doing extremely hateful? Doesn't he deserve to die 1,000 times? Shinyensi nodded seriously. I was so angry with him that I didn't know what to say. I simply slapped him on the head, then call the police. Wenbei might not have been able to report it, but you surely can. What he's done is enough to get him executed 1,000 times over. Shinyensi rarely looked so stunned when it came to serious matters. I heard him think. But even if we catch him and sentence him to death, it's too easy for him. I gritted my teeth, looking at him with a sense of frustration. Considering the environment he grew up in, it wasn't surprising that he thought this way, but I couldn't let him do this. I thought of many things to say, but when it came to it, I didn't know how to put them into words. Finally, I let out a long sigh and said, Shinyensi, I know you have your ways. You want to catch him with your own hands and make him suffer. You don't want him to die easily. I also want to kill him with my own hands. But then what would be the point of everything you've done for me? Wenbei, my parents, and Shinyensi, they had protected me until the very last moment, hoping that I could live a good life. I'm investigating Wenbei's diary and delving into Chu Mulan's dangerous business because I don't want my loved ones to die in vain. But not avoiding danger doesn't mean I want to seek death, I said seriously to Shinyensi. I don't know what you're thinking. Are you planning to die with Chu Mulan? But from the beginning to the end, I've only wanted us to live together. Of course, if there's no other choice and we end up dying, that's just how it is. But I will never look down on my life, and I will never seek revenge at the cost of my life. So, Shinyensi, don't sacrifice your life to repay a debt of gratitude, and don't sacrifice your life to protect me. We will find the truth, stop him, and make him pay the price. Suddenly, I relaxed, tilted my head at him, and smiled. Shinyensi, after this is all over, come with me to see Wenbei and my parents. Let's tell them everything has been resolved and put their minds at ease. Then we can also tell them about our marriage. We've come this far, the evidence and the truth are all just one step away. We need to make him pay the price and also ensure that we can be together in the future. To achieve this, there's only one way, isn't there? I saw Shinyensi's eyes flicker, and his expression gradually relaxed. I leaned in and kissed him, then buried my head in his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body. Finally, I said, Shinyensi, let's make a choice that benefits both of us. I finally managed to persuade Shinyensi. We hadn't called the police before because we weren't sure whether Wenbei's and my parents' deaths were accidents, not to mention Wenbei's ambiguous diary, but now that we had some evidence of Chu Mulan's crimes, calling the police was indeed the best option. With the Shin family's influence, Chu Mulan wouldn't be able to stop us. We quickly began to take action. However, I never expected that Chu Mulan would also act in advance. In my previous life, I was tricked into going out, so in this life, I naturally thought Chu Mulan would find an excuse to invite me out, but unexpectedly, I was knocked out directly while I was out. When I woke up, I found myself chained up in a room. This place was quite familiar to me. It was the same place I was taken to when I was kidnapped in my previous life. Unlike last time, there was someone in front of me this time. Chu Mulan was still wearing a well-tailored white shirt. He was sitting at the table with his head resting on his hand, smiling gently at me. The moment our eyes met, I heard him say in a warm and friendly voice, "You're awake." I sat up almost instinctively, my nerves instantly on edge. Chu Mulan smiled and shook his head. "Don't be nervous. I just invited you here to ask you something." Invited? I shook the chains on my body and said sarcastically. Chu Mulan didn't seem to care. He took out a USB drive and played with it casually. The moment I saw the USB drive clearly, I was stunned. I'd actually just gone out to throw out the trash, and before that, I'd just finished watching the contents of the USB drive left by Wenbei. The content was unexpected. I didn't quite understand it. So I'd been deep in thought and didn't realize I'd brought the USB drive with me. I fell silent, but Chu Mulan seemed to misunderstand. He walked up to me with the USB drive, bent slightly, and looked down at me. There was still a gentle smile on his face, but his voice was icy cold. "I've already seen the contents of the USB drive. This USB drive is fake, isn't it?" His tone was so certain that it made me suspicious. I remained calm and told the truth. "It's real," Chu Mulan sneered. "When Nan, we're at this point, there's no need for you to keep pretending." His eyes grew colder. "To be honest with you, before Wenbei died, I found out that she was trying to send out a message, but I stopped her. But I discovered it before she could send it out that time." She was quite smart, though. She had a backup plan and didn't carry the USB drive with her. I actually used some methods to get out of her what was on it later, but she stubbornly refused to say where she had hidden it. I wasted my sincere invitation for her to make money with us before. I even took her to our core base and showed her our punishment scene. Turns out she pretended to join us, but secretly collected evidence to stab me in the back. She was really hateful. Hearing his words, I suddenly widened my eyes and exclaimed in a voice that lost its usual pitch, "What methods did you use? What did you do to her?" Chu Mulan remained unmoved and even smiled at me. "Don't be so fierce, your sisters, Wenbei was much gentler than you." As he spoke, he walked towards the table. "Of course, I used some methods to make her talk. You should already know what business I'm in, right?" He walked back to the table and sat down, playing with the USB drive casually as he said indifferently, "Our business mainly involves exporting overseas. Coincidentally, your family's shipping business in the southern and southeastern coastal areas is doing very well, and Wenbei was, without a doubt, the successor of your family's company. Of course, if you were the successor, I would have chased you back then." After saying that, he smiled at me. I felt a physical sense of nausea. He continued, "You know, our business dealing with people is different from dealing with cats and dogs. Animals are obedient, but human consciousness is too strong, so they're not easy to manage. For those who try to run away, we don't directly get rid of them when we catch them. We bring them back to the base and call everyone else to witness the fate of those who try to escape. The fear in people's hearts is much more effective than iron chains. After seeing others being tortured to death, they don't dare to have the idea of running away. Of course, since I wanted Wenbei to join us, I naturally had to let her know about these things, which is why I took her to see the punishment scene, but I never expected that she would do such a thing even knowing our methods. She was really stupid." I was so angry that I couldn't speak for a moment and could only stare at him fiercely. Chu Mulan put away that false smile, and his expression immediately turned cold and ruthless. "After Wenbei agreed to join us, I had someone keep an eye on her 24 hours a day. I really didn't expect that, even in such a situation, she could still find the opportunity to collect evidence. By the way, can you tell me how Wenbei managed to get in touch with Xin Yanxi? She was clearly stopped by me when she tried to send the message, but Xin Yanxi still found out. I really can't figure it out." I snorted disdainfully. "If you can't figure it out, it just shows that you're stupid. You scumbag." Sure enough, Wenbei didn't not want to call the police. She couldn't. "Say whatever you want. In the end, you've all lost to me, haven't you?" Chu Mulan casually threw the USB drive into the trash can, wiped his hands, and said indifferently, "Since the USB drive you have is fake, the real one must be with Xin Yanxi. He should be here soon. The three of us can finally have a good talk face to face." My heart skipped a beat, and my first reaction was to worry if Xin Yanxi was following our plan. I was kidnapped so suddenly this time that I was really worried he would act impulsively out of anxiety. After all, in his heart, my life is more important than anything else. I was very uneasy, but there was nothing else I could do now. I could only force myself to suppress it and stared coldly at Chu Mulan. I still had some doubts that I couldn't figure out. I asked, "How can you be so sure that the USB drive in my hand is definitely fake?" "I'm not a fool." He looked at me with a bit of surprise in his eyes. "The USB drive contains the records of my relationship with Wenbei. Why would she pass on something that no one cares about? She even sacrificed her life for it." He paused and then said through gritted teeth, "However, I guess your parents found out something from Wenbei. They really loved their daughter. In the year after Wenbei died, they kept investigating our legitimate business. Several of our major funding chains were cut off by your parents. They were almost about to trace it back to me, so I had to deal with them quickly." I was stunned for a moment and then roared, "You killed my parents." He shrugged indifferently. "Of course, I also killed Wenbei. I couldn't possibly keep the lives of those who tried to send me to prison, could I?" He said it so lightly, as if he hadn't killed people but some chickens and ducks for dinner. I was so angry that I gasped for breath and struggled to rush towards him, but the iron chains held me back. No wonder I wanted to take a leave of absence from school and go back to accompany my parents for a while after Wenbei died, but they acted unusually and firmly insisted that I must go back to complete my studies. Their excuse at that time was that the Wen family could only be handed over to me in the future, and I should study hard, so they already knew at that time. I felt that I had to use a great deal of effort to breathe, but I still couldn't catch my breath because of the pain. He suddenly said again, "Come to think of it, Xin Yanxi didn't seem to care much about this matter before, but recently, he started investigating Wenbei's affairs on a large scale. I'm afraid it's all for you. I really have you to thank. I finally have the opportunity to get rid of this hidden danger once and for all." My heart tightened when I heard the words, "get rid of this hidden danger once and for all." Before I could think deeper about it, suddenly, the footsteps of several people were heard outside. My heart skipped a beat. and I instinctively looked towards the door. The next second, several people brought Shinyensi in. He was still wearing the clothes I wore on the day I was kidnapped, but he looked relatively neat. However, my first reaction was not joy. He actually came here alone. Just like in the previous life, he didn't even bring a bodyguard. I immediately panicked, but now I couldn't ask anything, nor could I show my panic. My heart was still filled with grief and indignation because of what Chumulin had just said, but the situation was not optimistic, so I could only force myself to suppress these emotions. I kept staring closely at Shinyensi. After he came in, he looked at me the first moment, and then he walked directly in front of Chumulin. The people who came in with him didn't leave but surrounded him. I couldn't see the situation inside clearly, but I could hear the voices. Shinyensi said coldly, "I prepared the thing you want, and I didn't bring anyone else. Let Wen Nan go." Chumulin sneered, "Now that you're here, do you really think you can leave? Although it's understandable that you're worried and act recklessly, Shinyensi, I didn't expect you to be so irrational. I told you to come alone, and you really came alone. Since you both know my secret, you're not leaving today." Shinyensi didn't respond to him. I really wanted to know what Shinyensi's situation was now. It was just that I couldn't hear anything useful from his inner thoughts. Shinyensi usually had a lot of thoughts in his mind and talked a lot. But once he really entered a highly concentrated state, he had no distracting thoughts at all. After waiting for a long time, Shinyensi finally said in a deep voice, "What Wenbei left wasn't a USB drive but a memory card. She hid it in the gap of the seat in the auditorium of School X. The content inside is a complete process of a murder. In a warehouse. There were a lot of people around, and your clear face was shown." When I heard Shinyensi finish speaking, I widened my eyes first. Did Wenbei really manage to film it? And without a doubt, this was probably the punishment scene that Chumulin had just mentioned. "Give it to me." Chumulin suddenly raised his voice, and then there was silence all around. I was so nervous that my palms started to sweat. Shinyensi sneered, "You're planning to kill both of us, and you still expect me to give it to you?" As soon as Shinyensi finished speaking, the group of people surrounding him suddenly assumed a posture as if they were going to snatch it by force, but Shinyensi's voice didn't waver at all. "I prepared the thing, but I didn't say I brought it with me. Let Wen Nan leave, and I'll stay, as long as she's safe and sound. I promised to give you the thing." Chumulin flatly refused. "Impossible. Since I dared to tell her everything, I have no intention of letting her leave. You can go." "And she stays?" "I can also get that shipping route that your Shin family has always wanted. The Wen family has caused me so much trouble. If you hadn't married her the first moment after the Wen family's accident, do you think I would have let her live until today?" Shinyensi remained unmoved. "If my people don't see Wen Nan leave safely before dawn, they will hand this thing over to the police. If you don't believe it, you can kill us right now." Chumulin's voice was ice cold. "Shinyensi, don't underestimate me. I also have people outside. Even if I really kill you too, your people may not have the ability to hand over the thing, then you can give it a try." Shinyensi even let out a light laugh, which was the strong confidence brought by his absolute certainty. "It's difficult to bring you down, but I can still manage to bring the entire Shin family down with you and die together with you. Let's see if, after all your painstaking efforts to climb to this position, you're willing to risk your life and bet with me." As soon as Shinyensi finished speaking, I heard Chumulin curse viciously. Sure enough, when Chumulin told me everything so readily just now, he had no intention of letting me live. It seemed that Wenbei and my parents had caused him a lot of trouble. He probably hated our Wen family to the core. It's just that he probably didn't expect, even though he had been monitoring Wenbei so closely, Wenbei could still obtain such evidence that left him with no room to refute. He probably originally planned to get the evidence from us and then directly deal with us, but now he had to consider one more thing. However, after listening to Shinyensi's words and combining all the things that had happened during this period, I suddenly understood everything. The truth made me couldn't help laughing. In an instant, everyone's eyes were suddenly turned towards me. Chumulin looked at me fiercely and said coldly, "Wen Nan, what are you laughing at?" "I'm laughing at your arrogance and conceit. You thought you had Wenbei under your control, but in the end, you were just being played by her." I laughed more and more recklessly. Chumulin suddenly pushed through the crowd and walked in front of me. Shinyensi immediately followed. At the same time, the group of people surrounding Shinyensi all took out their guns and pointed them at him. The atmosphere at the scene instantly became extremely tense. However, even though I was surrounded by guns now, I wasn't scared at all. I even looked at Chu Mulin with a smile and said softly, I didn't lie to you just now. The USB drive you got was the one that Wenbei pretended to pass on the message with. To be honest, when I first saw the content inside, I couldn't figure it out either, but now I know. After Wenbei found that she really couldn't break through your surveillance. She chose to give the clue to Xinyansi. She was being closely monitored by you, so she didn't dare to pass on the memory card openly. After all, this memory card was the biggest threat to you. Once there was any mistake, all her previous efforts would be in vain, so, as a last resort, she used a very roundabout way. Xinyansi timely picked up the conversation and told Chu Mulin how Wenbei had passed on the message to him. Chu Mulin couldn't accept it. Impossible. I only took her to the base for the first time in City Z. She had no chance to record the video at all. Moreover, how could she have prepared to pass on the message with the diary so early? Are you two playing me? I sneered. That's why I said you were completely played by Wenbei. After she was forced to join you, she knew that it would be impossible for her to get away easily, so she prepared a basket in advance. If she couldn't expose you herself, she would throw the evidence into the basket, and this diary is the basket. Chu Mulin was completely stunned. He still didn't believe it. What you said is just a conclusion. From the time she left the diary until her death, almost a year passed. There were too many possibilities of accidents during this period. It was simply impossible to achieve. I rolled my eyes without hesitation. That's why I said you're stupid. After Wenbei was threatened by you to join, she should have been closely monitored by you immediately. At that time, she judged that your power was very strong, and among the people she knew, the only one who could compete with you was Xinyansi. But with her character, she wouldn't simply involve Xinyansi in such a dangerous matter. So at first, she definitely planned to try to expose you herself. Only if she really couldn't do it would she ask Xinyansi for help. If she wanted to ask Xinyansi for help, she had to leave a clue for Xinyansi. You're right, she really couldn't have predicted everything that would happen a year in advance, so with the things she could use at that time, only this diary could convey an accurate signal in advance. Whether it was the password, the address, or the diary itself, they were all conveying the same message, that is, this matter was related to you. And the reason she finally chose to put the memory card in the place where you first met was just to match the clue she left for Xinyansi. Chu Mulin's eyes became more and more fierce, and they even began to turn red faintly. She even made the worst-case scenario. The code she left could only be understood by Xinyansi. In this way, even if you found this diary in advance, it wouldn't be easy for you to find the memory card. However, the way Wenbei passed on the message was indeed too obscure. Even we investigated for a long time and even took the risk to get close to you. I paused for a moment, then gave Chu Mulin a malicious smile. Come to think of it, I should thank you. If you hadn't told me the date and place where you first met, we might have had to wait until the school auditorium was renovated to find the memory card. In fact, if I hadn't been reborn this time, we would never have known what Wenbei really meant until we died. Wenbei's plan was full of uncertainties and elements of luck, and it was full of loopholes. However, the more I thought about it, the sadder I felt. Wenbei's situation must have been extremely difficult at that time. She was being monitored and forced to do things she didn't want to do. She held the hopes of those abducted people in her hands, but she was at a loss as to how to save them. Chu Mulin was involved in a business with great influence. There were possibilities that the people he blocked couldn't pass on the evidence, and possibilities that the methods he discovered couldn't be used. She didn't have the opportunity to make mistakes. Once Chu Mulin knew the existence of this evidence, there would be no way to stop his criminal behavior. Wenbei must have endured indescribable pressure. Perhaps choosing such an extreme way in the end was also because she really wanted to be free. As for this USB drive, I'm afraid she deliberately let you find it. The purpose was to completely divert your attention. For this, she even risked her own life. I spoke again, and my whole demeanor became completely cold. Chu Mulin, you're too conceited. You took advantage of Wenbei's feelings and thought you had her completely under your control. However, you never expected that it was this relationship you despised that exposed everything about you and finally sent you to hell. After I finished speaking, Chu Mulin roared out of control. What he thought was having everything under control was just an illusion of being toyed with by others. Wenbei had been dead for 2 years, and he had been played for 2 years. He thought he was acting with me and tricking me into finding the USB drive for him, but he didn't know that the real evidence was also delivered to us by his own actions. This realization must be more painful than killing him. the more he couldn't accept the reality, the more satisfied I felt. Shinyensi had quietly walked to my side. Before we could have any communication, Chu Mulan suddenly laughed twice and said harshly, "Forget it, Wenbei is already dead, I don't need to argue with her. Neither of you is leaving today, I don't want the memory card anymore, but I'll take your lives." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took out a gun and pulled the trigger at me. He was so fast that I didn't even have time to react. However, the next second, Shinyensi suddenly threw himself on me. I was stunned for a moment and shouted Shinyensi's name in a voice that lost its usual pitch. Suddenly, a neat and orderly sound of footsteps came from outside the room. I smelled the smell of blood coming from Shinyensi, and it gradually overlapped with the memories of my previous life. Those emotions that I had forcibly suppressed before couldn't be controlled anymore and surged out all at once. I seemed to be able to do nothing but shout Shinyensi's name. I didn't even feel that my wrist was scratched by the iron chain during the struggle. "Nan Nan, I'm fine, don't be afraid." I don't know when Shinyensi hugged me and gently soothed my back. I was gradually pulled back to reality by his voice. I don't know when a group of police officers rushed into the room. However, Chu Mulan was nowhere to be seen. I stared blankly at Shinyensi. He gently kissed away my tears and slowly raised the corners of his mouth. "It's all over, Nan Nan, I didn't forget what you said. We wanted to win without any worries, and this time we did it." It took me a long time to react. It turned out that Shinyensi's actions this time were all in cooperation with the police. I let out a long sigh of relief and completely relaxed. Then I fainted unceremoniously. Everything was finally over. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. Shinyensi was shot in the leg by Chu Mulan's final attack, and his hospital bed was next to mine, but he didn't lie in his own bed. Instead, he squeezed in with me. When he saw that I had woken up, he suddenly hugged me and cried silently. It was really not easy for us to be alive and hugging each other after going through so many things, but no matter how difficult it was, I couldn't stand it anymore. After he hugged me for 20 minutes, I forcefully pulled Shinyensi away. Just as I was about to ask him to tell me what happened next, I suddenly remembered the last sentence I heard before I fainted. I suddenly widened my eyes in disbelief and said, "By the way, Shinyensi, you said this time before, could it be that you?" Shinyensi wiped the corner of his eye and smiled at me. "Yeah, I remembered something these past few days." Sure enough, Shinyensi remembered the things of his previous life. Then, Shinyensi told me the parts that I didn't know. After I was kidnapped, he remembered some things. At that time, his people had already found the memory card, and he had also gotten in touch with the police. After he submitted the evidence to the police by combining the memories of the two lives, they formulated this plan. In his previous life, Shinyensi had already figured out the structure of the base where I was kidnapped clearly, so this time, he drew a map for the police according to his memory, and after discussion, it was decided that he would come first to delay the time and divert Chu Mulan's attention. Shinyensi had the latest communication and recording devices provided by the police on him. In order not to alert the enemy, he really went to meet Chu Mulan alone. And the police monitored the situation here in real time outside. At the same time, another group of police officers started searching for evidence in the base according to the map provided by Shinyensi. They made sure not to give Chu Mulan any chance to take advantage of loopholes and turn this situation around this time. After we found the USB drive, Chu Mulan might have been in a hurry or overconfident. He didn't bring many people to the base that day, and they were quickly subdued by the police. The moment Chu Mulan saw the police, he ran away from the other side, but in the end, he only reached the exit and was captured by the police who had already set up an inescapable net. There was nothing more we could do at this point. After that, we cooperated with the evidence collection. When this shocking human trafficking case that shook the whole country was completely solved, I went to see Chu Mulan once. I took Wenbei's diary and gave it to him, not for anything else. I just thought that Wenbei should witness his death. Before leaving, on a whim, I asked him one more question. "Chu Mulan, did you have any real feelings for Wenbei at that time?" Chu Mulan was silent for a while, and finally gave a mocking smile. "You young masters and ladies born with a silver spoon in your mouth are really ridiculous. You surely don't understand, living in a dark and sunless house, eating the vegetable leaves that others don't want, and wearing the clothes fished out of the trash can. The feeling that everyone looks down on you and anyone can bully you." Even when I returned to the Chu family later, the situation was the same. "Feelings? Only people like you would value such useless things. I'm not that pathetic." You see, in the end, even though everyone scolds and spurns me, no one looks down on me, they have to admit that I'm amazing, which proves that my choice was right. After listening, I nodded and didn't say anything more. Everyone has their own aspirations, but I really wish that he could be a beast in his next life. On the day Chu Mulan was executed, Shin Yanxi and I went to the cemetery together, the police later told us. Chu Mulan's business sold young girls. They focused on quality rather than quantity, and the number of people transported at one time wasn't large. These girls would first receive unified training in various reception or flattering skills after being sent abroad, then they would be sold to their regular business partners. And those girls were either orphans or people who were not valued in their families. Some people disappeared without anyone knowing. Some people were ignored by their families after receiving some money. In the end, very few people actually reported the cases, which was why Chu Mulan had been operating until now. There was only one girl. She was born in a family that favored sons over daughters and had depended on her elder sister since childhood. She was sold to Chu Mulan after being deceived by her boyfriend, and her parents ignored her after receiving a sum of money. But her elder sister didn't accept it and finally found a way to get into this place. And the video left by Wenbei was actually taken by this elder sister. This was learned from the mouths of the surviving girls, but they couldn't clearly say what exactly happened at that time. The girl who gave the memory card to Wenbei said that among those abducted girls, there had always been a rumor, that is, no matter who wanted to escape, they should take this memory card with them. Over the years, this memory card had passed through the hands of many girls. They all knew that if they were caught while trying to escape, they wouldn't be killed immediately. They still had the opportunity to meet other people and could pass this evidence on. As long as there was one person who didn't give up, one day they could save everyone. That day, this memory card was given to Wenbei, and thus, the prelude to all the subsequent events was opened. I told the whole story to Wenbei, my parents. The result of the struggle wasn't necessarily victory. Or victory would come at a great cost, but if people really had souls, I hope that Wenbei and my parents can let go after hearing this. At least we did a good thing, didn't we? I chattered on in front of the tombstone for a long time. Shin Yanxi stayed by my side all the time, although he didn't say anything. Just his presence made me feel very at ease. When we were leaving and walking out, I suddenly grabbed his hand and said, Shin Yanxi, I'll tell you a secret. I can really read minds. I turned to him and winked slyly, then slowly said, for example, I know that you were just thinking of asking Xiao Zhang to prepare a press conference to officially clarify the so-called substitute rumor. Shin Yanxi's pupils dilated slightly. He blurted out, how do you know? I hummed triumphantly, I told you I can read minds. Shin Yanxi didn't say anything. I continued, we both know that Chu Mulan fanned the flames of that substitute rumor. Now that he's dead, the rumor is long